turned over one of the skulls of Tuganda to the same brotherhood. They've tried and failed to get their hands on those skulls for the last 400 years.
They don't have all three.
We don't know how many they have. Have you any idea what it means if the Brotherhood gets control of the skulls?
They'd be invincible.
And stop them. You're the only one who can.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about The Phantom from 1996.
Starring Billy Zane.
Starring Billy Zane.
Who we saw in person.
Yes.
On Tuesday.
Yep.
A most charismatic man.
Yeah, really was.
Very friendly, very funny.
Patient.
Yes, that too. Patient with some of the frankly ludicrous things people asked him.
Yeah.
Or just deeply personal things that they asked him.
Yeah.
But he was very charming.
Yes. Something that occurred to me that somehow I didn't mention when we talked about Flash Gordon, The Blast Two Times, was when I was a kid, and it relates to that Hulk cartoon, which I was sure lasted for 10 years, but it was only 13 episodes.
Yes.
I used to watch a cartoon called Defenders of the Earth.
Oh, okay.
As a kid, which was burned into my mind. I still remember the theme song, much like Hulk, but that starred a bunch of King Features heroes, Mandrake the Magician, Flash Gordon, and the Phantom.
Yes.
And they were fighting Ming in the far future year of 2015. And
Yes.
I looked it up, there were 65 episodes over the course of 3 months, like from September to December of 86. That's it. That was the window that this show was on. It's a bizarre...
It's like one every 2 days, almost.
Yeah. It's crazy, a crazy number. I don't know why, what was going on with that.
They just got them out there.
They were trying to reach syndication numbers as soon as possible. I don't know what the deal was. Anyway, so yes, I actually had a strange... I was aware of the Phantom, was aware of Mandrake and Flash Gordon through this cartoon, more than any other form, I think.
Purists get grumpy about that cartoon because they gave the Phantom superpowers.
Oh, okay.
He has the power of 10 tigers.
Oh, right.
And I think he actually yells that. Give me the power of 10 tigers.
I don't remember that bit, but I believe it. Okay, so... The Phantom was created by Lee Falk in 1936. So Falk had previously created Mandrake the Magician in 1934.
He was quite a young person at this time, like a lot of these people were in the 30s. He was only 23, apparently, when he sold Mandrake to the Syndicate. Although he used to claim he was 21.
Okay.
And he was only 25 when he sold the Phantom to the Syndicate, to King Features.
So it was a daily strip, and then a Sunday color page was added in 1939, which is interesting because he's mentioned as being gray a couple of times.
Yes.
In the black and white dailies.
Yes.
So I guess it's
the ones we read.
It's not until the Sundays that we learn that he's actually wearing a purple outfit.
It seems to have there is no consensus, much like the Hulk story. There isn't a consensus on why the Phantom became purple.
Yeah.
I've read at least 2 explanations from Falk himself, quoting Falk. He decided on purple for the Sunday colours because the comics had already been recoloured in other markets.
Oh, of course.
And apparently there was red. In Europe it was like red. Mm-hmm. So he was running around in red.
Yeah, I think in Turkey it's called red something.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And one of them had done purple.
Right.
And for whatever reason, they stuck with purple.
Okay.
But there's no consensus on when this happened, why he didn't just change it back to grey for the coloured dailies. It's just one of those things like Grey Hulk.
I would love to have some untangling of this because it's a terrible color for the jungle. If you're going to run around stealthily in the jungle in a purple outfit, it seems like the wrong choice. But the early strips
where
were
does purple
urban.
blend in anywhere?
Right,
It's
exactly.
literally the rarest colour in nature. Well, it's not the rarest colour, but it's a sufficiently rare colour that only in the Roman Empire, only emperors were allowed to wear it.
Yeah, right. It seems like... So in the early strips, it's surprising they're actually quite urban. He's not a jungle hero until later on.
No.
Like Falk initially has just he's made a Green Hornet. the Shadow or the Spider.
Very much like the Shadow.
He's a pulp hero. In fact, early on, it seems like his secret identity is going to be this rich guy, much like the Shadow and the Spider. Maybe less so Zorro. I don't know if Zorro was aristocratic.
Idle rich person that fights crime for their amusement.
Yeah.
So a little bit like Batman.
Yeah.
At the start, not what Batman became, but like Batman, the Phantom became very different, very quickly, actually.
Yeah, so Falk decided he was more interested in jungle adventures, especially with the jungle. But my feeling is, if they started coloring him in purple in other markets, like Europe or Turkey or the U.S. or whatever, that might have been during the urban days when it didn't matter so much they had to blend into the forest.
Yeah. That's fair reasoning. Maybe. Like it's also likely that they just didn't give a shit.
Right.
These dumb kids. Yeah. Just get it out there.
Or it might have been the color that printed easiest. Who knows?
Good. It's good that we read the ones we did. So we read the first 3 stories. Yeah. Of the Phantom, and it's good that we read them because it turned out that 2 of those stories were what the movie was based on.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was pure coincidence. Actually. So it was really good, and it was also interesting because we got to see the evolution of the character.
Yeah.
The way he started off, it's very much a pulp style hero. Like we said, it's like someone that sneaks around a city wearing black, fighting
the
crime.
Domino Mask, like Green Hornet or Zorro or Lone Ranger. Yeah.
Having clashing with organized crime. Yeah. Doing ambiguously slightly outside the law, explicitly a vigilante and not a hero.
Yes.
All these pulp tropes, which we don't really see anymore, but were everywhere in the 30s.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this thing is chock full, which we'll talk about as we go through the strip a bit. I haven't read these before. I've never read any Phantom comics before, as far as I can recall, and I always kind of avoided them. We haven't mentioned Remar, the artist.
Right.
I always, at a glance, thought his art looked kind of sketchy and rudimentary. Actually, it's not. It's fairly sophisticated. His female figures, especially, are really well done, and faces and body language. He seems to struggle a bit more with his hero. Phantom looks pretty stiff most of the time. Not quite sure why. But it's very detailed, and it's done with like zip-tone shading, so there are like various shades of grey and stuff in there. It's pretty decent.
Fine. The art's good. I wasn't bored reading the art.
Yeah.
Especially can draw the ladies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these comics, like Joe Palooka, especially the early Joe Palooka work by Ham Fisher himself, that was hard to read.
Yes,
that was hard to look at. That stuff.
Yeah,
but these are good. They look great.
Yeah,
nice clean art.
Yeah,
just easy to look at.
Yeah. So we start out with the Phantom doesn't appear for, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 days.
Yeah,
of these dailies.
That's right.
We start out with this character, Diana Palmer. She's practicing boxing. She's on an ocean liner.
That's great.
First panel is her punching some dude in the face.
This is pretty cool. So these are strips written in the 30s, so they're really racist.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the racism later. We'll get into that. But also they're quite sexist.
Yeah.
Having said that, sexism. It's pretty cool that it starts off with her doing boxing.
Yes. Yeah.
She's very kind of like...
And she seems to switch jobs. She seems to be some kind of marine biologist or something at the start.
She's an explorer, a pulp character.
Right.
Kind of like a Lara Croft kind of.
Yeah.
So lady adventurer.
Yeah.
So she's idle rich. So she comes from wealth.
Yeah.
That's how she can afford, well, not too much wealth because that becomes a point later on.
Right.
But she can finance expeditions off into darkest Africa or the New World or Indonesia, the Dutch East Indies, and she's great at several different things. So she's a champion swimmer. She can box. Obviously, she lays out her trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a feisty, proactive, independent woman.
Yes. Yeah, she's kind of spitfire, usually barely clothed or wearing very clingy clothing.
Yep.
Like this boxing scene, she's in her boxing gear, so she's hardly wearing anything. But she has found a hoard of ambergris underwater.
Yes.
It's been somehow trapped. It hasn't floated to the surface.
It's the whale's graveyard.
Yes.
It's like the elephant's graveyard, except for whales.
So she's found a mother lode, and it's worth like a lot. They talk about it like they talk about gold or diamonds and other pulp strips.
Yeah.
And she wants to use this money to finance the hospital that her deceased father, founded. They need more money. That's what her plan is to do. But some gangsters find out about it, and they come after her for it. Finally, they board the ship. They're like, tell us where the ambergris is,
well, they want the ambergris that's on the ship.
That's right.
There's some on the ship. It's like 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's quite a lot
Yeah.
of this, and it goes for, like a phenomenal amount of money. They want that, and she's, she won't tell them where it is because she's feisty and tough.
Yeah.
And also she says, why have you brought so many men? Because they got like a dozen men. She's like, it's just me and my boxing coach and like maybe 2 crew.
Yeah.
You didn't need a dozen men. And this gangster who's called like Fats something or other.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. Oh yeah, it is. It's Fats Horgan.
Fats
Morgan? Oh, it's Morgan? Horgan? Yeah.
He says, no, trust me, I need this many men because I'm expecting trouble. I'm expecting someone to show.
Yeah.
And then the very next panel is the Phantom coming out of the New York, the bay.
Yeah.
And he's climbing aboard the ship.
Yeah. So the Phantom arrives and fights these guys, electrocutes them to freeze them in place, manages to beat them up. Also, at one point he punches somebody and leaves a skull mark on their cheek. Later we learn this is indelible ink.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but this is early days.
Yes.
Later on, I think it's becomes slightly magical.
Oh, okay. She's like, what did you rescue me for? And he's like, they're after your ambergris on the boat. She didn't know quite why they were there. And then he kisses her in pulp fashion.
Yeah. He's like, shut up, lady.
Yes.
And kisses her. It's like, whoa, so much for Miss Independent.
Yes.
So it's certainly not perfect.
Yeah. So then we find out that Fats was actually working for this guy named Ahmed Singh.
Prince
Ahmed Singh. So we now think that Prince Ahmed Singh is the real villain. He's not even that. He is keen on the ambergris, but he actually wants Diana.
He wants something else. He wants Diana. Yeah, that's right. In fact, the mobsters didn't do what they were supposed to. They were not supposed to. The mobsters were focused on getting the ambergris, but they were supposed to get Diana, and they got sidetracked because Diana is the mother lode. She can lead.
Right.
She can lead Prince Singh to the to the elephant's
but
graveyard.
Doesn't he also have a romantic interest in her? Maybe is that implied, or is that...
It's implied he has a sinister sexual interest in her as a sinister Asiatic.
Right.
But actually, he just wants. It's just adds. This is another pulp thing.
Yeah.
White women at the mercy of.
Yes, we had it last week with Ming the Merciless.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's actually only really interested in the whale's graveyard.
Yes.
As I said, he's actually from Java. It turns out. Ahmed Singh is not a Javanese name.
Oh, this is very mixed up. Whatever's going on with the races of the people in this comic and in the movie, very hard to tell where they are in the world.
It's because this is early days.
Yes.
And in fact, this is jumping ahead a bit. Falk's Phantom comics, as they will eventually, when they firm up, will never be really set anywhere real.
Right.
They're set. Eventually, it's set on an island, an African island nation, or called Bangala.
Okay.
That is the canon setting for the Phantom's home country and where he operates out of. However, Bengala is not really anywhere real.
Right, of course.
Because it's got, but not just not a real place, obviously, but it's also, it can't exist geographically.
Yeah.
It's sort of got sub-Saharan, sometimes it's sub-Saharan.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's got deserts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's got mountains with Arabian princes living in them.
Right.
So it's a kind of fantasy land. So this kind of ambiguity about where the Phantom lives and who...
Yeah, well, there's some of these strips that are saying, like, oh, his name is known throughout Asia.
Yeah. Oh, this is...
And then it's like, oh... I was like, I thought he was from Africa or something.
Because this is early days.
Yeah,
this is very much early days.
And they're like, oh, we're going to put you on trial in Bombay. I was like, oh, where are they supposed to be? Bengal, maybe? Like, I was like very confused.
Yeah. Well, in these early strips, they're in the quote unquote Dutch East Indies, and
yes, they do mention that as well.
It looks like that's now modern Indonesia. That's where, of course, the island of Java is.
I think they mentioned Sumatra at some stage as well by name,
and I think they even mention a bridge protectorate by name that actually existed. As part of the archipelago.
Right.
So the Phantom is like based in Indonesia at this point because he seems to live nearby to where all this action occurs, where the Devil's Vortex is, and all this kind of stuff. But this is all abandoned later on, and he's eventually given a firm place in Bangala. Right.
So Prince Ahmed comes to this ball, which is being held in the city. Yeah. He's royalty, so he's invited. Yep. And then he invites her out to the garden, and he's like, why don't you come back to my place, my country, effectively? And she kind of agrees, and I'm not sure why he didn't just romance her. It seemed like he was in with a chance.
Because he's evil.
Yeah, exactly.
So hanging around at the moment is a character called Jimmy Wells.
Yes. And it seems like Jimmy is the secret identity of the Phantom. She complains about him all the time in the way that Lois complains about Clark Kent.
Yes, exactly.
Jimmy's like, why don't you marry me? She's like, I'm waiting for a real man. Yeah. She literally says that to him at one stage, and she's like, you're lazy, you don't get a job. Yep. She's constantly complaining about his buddy has the same nose as the Phantom, and most of his readers are like, oh, this is the guy.
He was supposed to be the guy. Right. 100%. Yeah. Falk has stated that, but he decided to change it. Possibly because he was worried about a copyright lawsuit from the guys that wrote...
Yeah, Lamont Cranston in The Shadow.
Actually, it might not have been The Shadow. It might have been the guys, a character called the Grey Seal or the Phantom Detective.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, all of these guys were circling around. And this is something that Kevin Patrick said in the interview that was on Deconstructing Comics, that it may be that he was worried about a copyright lawsuit. But it could also be what he said, that he just became more interested in what he ended up saying, because all of a sudden, we'll fast forward a little bit after he's rescued Diana, Prince Singh knows him, and is frightened to recognize him. Yeah. And then the Phantom starts talking about the Singh Brotherhood and all these things he knows, and he says the Phantom warns only once.
Yes, that's his catchphrase. Yeah, he says it.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's all turned on its head. Gone is the Shadow / Spider / Bruce Wayne Batman.
Now we get more Tarzan-y kind of stuff, but we also get this whole legacy character, and we learn that the Phantom. So his ancestor was killed by the Singh Brotherhood pirates in 1525, 400 years earlier.
That's right.
And the son of this captain of the ship that was attacked by these pirates decided to avenge his father's death and swore on an oath on the skull of his father's killer that he would do this. And then he also swore this oath that he would pass on the legacy to his son. So his son would become the Phantom. So people who aren't the Phantom or inside that circle of the Phantom and his brides think that he's this immortal ghost. The ghost who walks is what they call him. They think he's such a cool guy that's been around for 400 years.
And the man who cannot die because he just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he keeps coming back.
That's right.
There's a pretty good line in the movie about this, actually, delivered by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa.
Yeah.
So this is This is pretty probably. This is the Phantom, which I recognise. Open a tab at this point. The Phantom was very popular in Australia for most of the 20th century.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Let's talk about that now. Maybe the Phantom as a character is of no interest, as far as I can tell, outside of Australia. I landed in Australia in 2004. Would go into convenience stores and see 3 or 4 different Phantom titles on the shelves. Yeah. Some were reprints, some were news stories. I was like, what? And I would meet Australians who thought the Phantom was Australian. Yeah. An Australian comic strip that was created in Australia by an Australian.
Yep, 100%.
And I could not figure it out. And for 20 years, I would walk around going, what was the cultural foothold? What happened? What was it? Was it some sort of industrial? Were they able to get the strips for 5 cents or something to reprint? What happened that caused the explosion here? Nowhere else. Well, although I guess it had some popularity at different times, like in India, in Europe, But those places, it's disappeared. It seems to only still have a foothold here, as far as I can tell.
I read Kevin Patrick's book, The Phantom Unmasked America's First Superhero, which is about this precise thing, specifically why the Phantom was not big in America and was so big in Sweden, Australia, and India. It's still big in Sweden.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, Sweden is the only place that produces new Phantom books.
Okay.
So as far as I know, Sweden still produces Phantom stories. And those are the ones that are still being published. Here in Australia, they're translated into English. And that was the source of new Phantom comics ever since the 1970s? No, 1980s.
Okay.
Oh, so the first... Yeah, Lee Falk was still writing them, but he was writing them for newspapers.
Right.
And so you would get 2 to 3 stories a year.
Yeah.
The Phantom's like being published monthly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not enough.
Yeah.
So in the 60s, the Swedish publisher of the Phantom started writing new Phantom stories.
Okay.
Quite different from the ones Lee Falk was writing. So much more, because they were written to be published in comics immediately, so not to be in a newspaper first, they're much kind of better suited. I'm pretty sure the Phantom comics that I read in the 90s were probably Swedish translations, because they didn't seem like newspaper strips. They seemed like plotted, quite cool. Okay. I remember the stories being quite interesting with lots of Bengalis characters.
Yeah.
Not Bengali, but Bengalis.
Yeah. Bengalis, yeah.
So from about, as I said, from 1981 onwards, Frew Publishing, which is the Australian publisher that makes the Phantom and still does here in Australia, would publish some new stories, as many new stories as Falk was turning out for the last 16 years of his life. Or so.
He was apparently dictating strips on his deathbed in 1999.
Yeah, I read that. Amazing. And then his wife took over and finished them up.
Yeah, right.
The ones that he had going for the next year or so.
Right.
Amazing. But he's only writing 2 to 3 a year. You have to wait till they finish their run in the newspapers before you get them. So they were doing a lot of reprints. So even in the 70s and 80s, this is already past the kind of the Phantom's great heyday, which was the 50s.
Right.
So there's a lot of nostalgia stuff already.
Yeah.
Doing reprints, doing new stuff. Then from 1981, translating comics from Swedish into English and publishing them as Phantom comics.
But there did he have any psychological insight?
Well, this is tricky.
Or financial? Was it some...
I can tell a story about this. We can tell it later if you like to, or we can tell it now. Might as
well. We're in this tab, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you got to go back to 1930s.
Okay.
All right. When the comic first came out and was sold and was being distributed by the King Features syndicate. King Features was happy to sell the comic overseas, happy to license it to other syndicates. So in Sweden, it's licensed to a syndicate. In Australia, it's licensed to a syndicate, who were then sold it on. In the case of Australia, the first place it appeared was the Woman's Mirror.
Okay.
Which it was a woman's magazine, the Australian Women's Mirror. It appeared for the first time on the 1st of September 1936. Interestingly, in Sweden as well, the first thing it was published in was also a women's magazine, and even in India, it was published in a women's magazine, or a magazine aimed, a kind of modern glossy magazine aimed at a domestic kind of household readership. Yeah, this Patrick argues gives the strip some advantages over newspaper strips. These magazines were national magazines. Oh, so newspapers are in a city, or even sometimes a neighborhood. Yeah. Whereas these magazines were going out to everywhere in the country. Plus, because they were women's magazines, women were buying them and keeping them in the house, and then their kids read them. Oh. And their kids just want to read the Phantom comics.
Right.
And even the husbands, everyone's reading them.
I remember grabbing my mom's magazines to flip through them to look for comics.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So any country where that happened... It's more likely to gain a foothold.
It seems like
permanent foothold.
The smoking gun, since all 3 cases began in these magazines, in the 3 countries where it became dynamite.
I was really looking for something about the fact that it was maybe set closer to Australia. It's not in Chicago or New York. It's in some kind of vague jungle location. I thought it might have been any of those things.
That's part of it. That's part of it as well.
Yeah.
Now, you're right to think that, because the Phantom, as we've established, is not geographically tied to a real place.
Yeah.
He's not an American hero.
That's right.
He could be. I mean, originally he was like the descendant of an English lord or something. Yes. But I think Falk even retconned that later.
Right. There's definitely also, it's an interesting thing because he's working with the colonials. I mean, the character of the Phantom is working with the colonial armies that are stationed, like this Captain Horton or whatever his name was, that shows up a little bit later and becomes his Commissioner Gordon. But that's a very specific... You wouldn't see Batman or Lone Ranger or anybody else doing that. That's a very specific Phantom thing where he's this guy white guy living in a jungle with these black tribes, but he's cooperating more with the... At one point, he sets these two tribes against each other in order to save the white army from being slaughtered. And he does skip the line. Like, normally I wouldn't set the tribes against each other, but you were going to get your asses handed to you. So, in order to save you, I did it. I felt like that might have been a part of it, too. It's very... Americans would deny the colonial aspects of any strip. It would be like very subtextual, whereas here it's right on the surface.
Yeah. And it seems like in Australia these older strips were the ones that were more popular. There was a bit of a reaction against the Swedish ones when they started to be translated into English, that this isn't my Phantom.
Right.
Where's the Phantom that kicks natives and sticks up for the British Empire?
Yes.
But the Swedish very much loved this, because in the 60s, the Swedish populace was very kind of like politically engaged, very progressive. They wanted to read politically engaged progressive stories where the Phantom is kind of like a champion of the independence of Bangalore, and there are characters in it that go on to become like the elected president. It addresses things like Diana has to like fight to... She joins like the Phantom Squad.
Right.
So he has a Phantom Squad at one point that patrols the jungle. Starts off white and male. Over time, it becomes predominantly native.
Right.
And even Diana even joins it and like gets commissioned in it.
Yeah, right.
And so things like that.
Right.
But Kevin Patrick interviewed did a survey of around 600 Phantom readers in the course of researching for his book. And of course, they have as many reasons for liking... They all have individual reasons for liking the Phantom. But there seems to be some consensus that he's... like there's something there. There's something for everybody in the Phantom, almost.
Okay.
Because he's quite complex. Not complex, but there's something there for you to latch... Something for you to be interested in and to latch onto. Where he quoted one person... This is in 2012 when he did this survey. She said, "It's hard to say what I like best about the Phantom. I like the originality of the Phantom in his world, the theme of the man who cannot die yet is mortal. I like the idea of a hero who is a stern and deadly foe of evildoers, a mysterious masked avenger whose symbol is the skull, while being a true hero and protector of the innocent. Most of all, I like his exotic and mysterious home in the deep woods," which is where he lives, "where civilization has not yet reached. I love the jungle stories and the stories of the mountain princes next to the jungle." This was a woman, as mentioned, aged 50 to 65 in 2012.
Right.
It might be that woman that used to wander around the comics convention asking for Phantom comics.
Yes. When I used to sell at comic markets, there was this one particular woman who looked like she was in her 60s or 70s, this old black lady who would come around with a cane, and she'd go from stall to stall just asking, "Do you have any Phantom comics? Do you have any Classics Illustrated?" And if you said no, she'd be very miffed and just walk off.
Well, at least 2 respondents saw specific national virtues.
Okay.
This is someone from Sweden and from Australia.
Okay.
Each of them saw them embodying the Australian and Swedish characters respectively. So a quote from the Australian is, "Ironically, the Phantom is part of the Australian cultural image, even though it isn't written by an Aussie. I think it's his understated way of doing things, championing the weak, and looking after a mate. That has appealed so much to Australians." That was a male respondent, aged 36 to 49. This one Swedish reader who was aged 18 to 35 said, in addition to protecting the innocent and being a kind, loyal friend to those who knew him, the Phantom also kept a low profile, not unlike Swedes in general, I suppose.
Fascinating.
So I think part of it is that the Phantom doesn't really have... Sometimes you read that the Phantom has a secret identity, but he doesn't really.
Right.
The Phantom...
In fact, it took him a very long time. It took Falk a long time to give him his secret identity of Kit Walker. By the way, that name is on the nose for the Ghost Who Walks. For him to be called Kit Walker.
But it's just an alias too.
Right.
It's what he uses when he goes out and has to interact in human... It's not like the film where that's his actual name.
Okay.
In the comics, it was just his alias that he used
that makes more sense,
when he wasn't being the Phantom.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So he's only the Phantom.
Yeah, right.
And the Phantom is the secret identity, and Kit Walker's the cover.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Astonishingly, and perhaps as further evidence of just being able to see what you want in the Phantom, remarkably, the Phantom is very popular, or was very popular, among Indigenous Australians.
Right.
So Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders.
Okay.
Apparently like the Phantom so much that there have been no fewer than 3 government publications starring the Phantom to introduce
educational
educational comics. 2 were written by the Australian Electoral Commission.
Okay.
One was called The Phantom in Rolls and Votes.
Okay.
And was published in 1988.
Okay.
And the other one was called Vote One Phantom and was published in 1990. There was also one published by the Family Court of Australia, which unfortunately no longer exists. A Whitlam initiative established in the 1970s. It was killed by the coalition in cahoots with One Nation, which is extremely disgusting. In 1997, they commissioned an educational comic book called The Wisdom of the Phantom, purpose of which was to provide Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities with information about the court's counselling services. In this, the Phantom returns home, which is in Northern Australia, and learns from his wife, Diana, that their friends Pug and Ruby, who are presumably Indigenous, have separated and are in dispute over custody rights for their children. The Phantom urges them to seek advice from the family court's counsellors, reassuring them that the court employs people who know us and our ways and will respect our traditions. So here the Phantom is speaking, saying that our traditions are the Indigenous traditions.
Right. Did you see the thing about the tribes in Papua New Guinea that were painting the Phantom on their shields?
Yes.
Because they had been given these comics by American servicemen in World War II. They just handed these comics on to these, or shared them with these tribes, and the tribes became obsessed with the Phantom. I don't think we've seen a reversal like that in any other racist comic that we've covered, where they actually reclaimed it, or repurposed it for themselves.
It's remarkable. Apparently you can still, depending, I'm not sure, I only just read that one comment in the Wikipedia article, and they have a picture of a Phantom shield. There are tribal people that still live a tribal life in Papua New Guinea, and it may very well be that they still paint Phantoms on their shields. If so, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A Phantom cargo collar. But I've left the best one for last.
Okay.
In 1987, a superhero was invented to promote in response to the AIDS epidemic, to help Torres Strait Islander people to wear condoms.
Okay.
The character is called Condom Man. And he looks exactly like the Phantom.
Wow.
Except he promotes wearing condoms.
Right.
Yeah, he has some. His catchphrase is something like "Have game, stay safe, wear condoms."
Wow.
Apparently, this is so effective that it was relaunched in 2009.
Wow.
You can visit a website.
Okay.
There's a website about Condom Man.
Right.
And his sidekick, Lubarella.
Okay.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I believe you.
Okay, so the question here is, like, is this problematic? I mean, Patrick addressed it. Is it problematic that White Phantom is speaking to and for Indigenous people?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So why is he so popular with Indigenous people then? You think they'd be hyper aware of this kind of thing? Patrick's idea is that the Phantom is, by being of American origin but of being of nebulous nation, he's sufficiently removed from mainstream Australia.
Right.
you can interpret him in accordance with your own worldview. You don't have to accept him as coming from a specific cultural worldview.
Right. The interesting thing about that is, I mean, this is outside of the comic and the movie, but the actor that plays Captain Horton in the movie is this British actor that lived in Australia all his life. So there's like, you could read stuff into that if you wanted to.
Speaking of people identifying the Phantom as embodying the Australian character in some way, shape or form, Billy Zane made noises to that effect at the event we visited. He said that the Phantom was part of the national character of Australia. He actually said that. And the
director of the movie is Australian.
Of course. He said Australians...
That's like, so what is going on? That's like, almost like, I know they weren't consciously thinking it, but it's almost like the producers are like, well, it has to be an Australian director. Because this is an Australian comic strip.
Well, I can talk about how... I can talk about how Simon Wincer was brought on a little later.
Okay.
But it's interesting. Like, he actually said, like, Billy Zane said, Australians are Kid Walker.
Right. Right.
I suppose he mean... I'm not sure what he means by that. You can put your own spin on it, people listening. He said he liked the role because the Phantom is a happy hero in his man cave with his animal friend.
He has a goofy smile on his face the whole movie.
Yeah.
No matter what's happening, he's got a smile.
He's quote, just a dude, no baggage.
Yes, he's the anti-Batman. They really played anti-Batman in the movie. But we'll get to that. There's a few more plot points in the comic I wanted to get to. One, I wanted to get back to Jimmy Wells, the rich dandy who does nothing, and the switcheroo that we thought he was going to be the Phantom, but he wasn't. Because I thought this would be a great plot point to do in a superhero movie that's never been done. Is to have your superhero show up in some scenes, have this other rich guy show up whenever that guy's not in the room, and have the audience think, hey, it's the same guy, and then have a switch and then reveal it's not actually the same guy, they just happen to look a little bit alike. Now, I don't know...
Like a bait and switch.
I don't know if there's any physical way to do that on screen. I don't know any two actors that look alike enough that you'd be fooled by... I guess maybe if they wore a full face mask, it's possible, but... it would have been a neat trick for somebody to try to pull it off.
I know what you mean. It's sort of thing you would get in a comedy maybe as a bait and like a throwaway gag, but build your movie around it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
After Prince Ahmed kidnaps Diana, we think that he's just the Darth Vader. He takes her to Emperor Palpatine, who is this guy named... was it Kabai Singh?
Kabai Singh, yeah.
Kabai Singh.
He's like Arabian prince. He's fat. Yeah. He's got a feathered turban.
Yes,
beringed and whiskered.
Yeah,
and he hates Westerners. In fact, he tells he doesn't like Ahmed because Ahmed is too Western.
Yeah,
because Ahmed wears suits. He goes, take off those Western weeds. Yeah, I was reading that going, what is this? Like, is he talking about tobacco? No. Weeds is an archaic way to say clothes, like widow's weeds.
Yes, like widow's weeds, right? So then he also wants everybody wants this amber grease. But I think they immediately strip Diana, his harem strips her, and they put her in the local bikinis.
Yeah.
And so she can be presented before the Great Sultan.
Sure. I have to strip her. It's for the story.
Yep. And now Kabai Singh, I keep want to say Kublai Khan.
Yeah.
Kabai Singh has a mistress named Sala.
Yeah.
And later on, once the Phantom has beaten the Singh Brotherhood temporarily, for the time being, Sala reveals that she's actually an agent she falls in love with the Phantom.
Yep.
As all the women do.
They all do, yep.
And she reveals that she's actually works for something called the Sky Band.
Yeah.
Which is a gang of
flying
lady
pirates.
Sky pirates.
That's so good.
I really liked them. They were a bit like Pussy Galore's flying circus.
Yeah.
And so they just show up in these planes and then force other planes to land, and then they just rob them.
Yep.
Basically.
That's great. And they have a secret... Everyone's got in these early comics. Everyone's got a secret hideout. The Singh Brotherhood have a secret base at the bottom of a whirlpool called the Devil's Vortex.
Yes,
which you can only get into through a sealed kind of like you seal yourself up in a canister shaped like a submarine.
Yeah.
And then you go down the whirlpool, and then you're extracted from it at
the
the other
Phantom
end.
actually just ride on the outside of one of these things.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, there's a scene similar to this in the movie. I was like, that's crazy. But it seems like they might have pulled it from this scene in the comic.
I think so. Even the submarine that they escape in looks like the submarine from the comic. So that is wild, like a whirlpool city under a whirlpool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
The Phantom blows it up. Oh, they blow it up, or something happens. It gets blown up, and then the Sky Band have the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but they have an underground airbase on an island.
Yeah.
The planes land, and then a big kind of like hatch opens, and then you go in, just like the crap cave in Steel. You get. Yes. You go down into it. And then there's a city down there now. Yeah. Populated completely by ladies.
Yes, and of course the boss lady wants to execute the Phantom, but then she meets him and then she's like, well, actually, I want you to be my mate.
She wants to melt that iceberg because he's so
mysterious and
he's unflappable.
That's right.
He's sardonic and self-deprecating.
Yes.
And she's used to people being angry or terrified.
Yes.
She can't understand why this guy is just so...
That's right.
Anyway, she becomes fascinated with him, as do all the other women.
And then Sala becomes jealous of this. And then Diana Palmer flies into this situation, and then there's a catfight between her and Sala.
It's really on the nose.
They're always fighting. It's a fun
story, but it's not very respectful to women.
No, it's ridiculous. But it's very... This stuff is all very pulpy. We haven't talked about the fact that he has the two guns. I don't know if they showed up much in these early strips, but he has a wolf named Devil, a trained wolf.
Devil the wolf. Later on, he gets a horse from an Arabian prince.
Right.
And
called Hero, I think. Yep.
A white horse that only he can ride, and a dog that obeys only him. Yeah, he's at peak human condition, but he's only human. He doesn't have any supernatural abilities.
That's right.
And in fact, he often gets injured. And sometimes he's at the mercy of his foes, but he's also extraordinarily lucky.
He's also at the mercy of the tribe that he lives.
Oh yeah, he lives with carnivorous pygmies.
Yeah, because he'll get injured and he'll go there, and then Garan, the witch doctor, will be like, well, I gotta light you on fire to cure you. And he's like, I need white man's medicine.
Yeah,
he wakes
in these early days, it's pretty disrespectful to the pygmies. Later on, it gets better.
Yeah.
I mean, for a given value of better, I mean, even later on, it's still this, even though, especially the Swedish, like the new Swedish material is more respectful.
Right.
Has characters from the, like characters of color, people with agency. It's not just the white savior ruling over them. Instead, the Phantom sort of eventually becomes a kind of mascot for Bangala. He's not.
Right.
Here in these early strips, he uses like tricks and tricks the credulous natives into thinking he's a ghost. And he uses like flimflammery by like going through like tunnels and stuff to pop up and look like he's in more than one spot and stuff. So they're like, whoa, the ghost still walks. All of that's kind of left behind eventually.
Right.
But still, there's only so far you can move away from white savior.
Yeah.
When your character is still white.
Yes.
And he's in this position of mythical authority.
Yeah, there's a thing we haven't mentioned. Part of it, he's only allowed to reveal his secrets to the woman he intends to marry.
Yes.
And then she's like, well, what if I don't intend, what if I refuse? He says, like, no one refuses the Phantom, basically.
Old Jungle's saying. There's another thing, this wasn't in these early comics, but eventually there would be these pithy lines that would either appear as a caption or someone would say in the text, and then there would be an asterisk, and then down the bottom of the panel it would say, Old Jungle's saying. Old Jungle's saying.
So... But my thing is, okay, we've had 20 generations, 400 years, on this island.
Yeah.
And he's only finding white ladies out in the world and coming back to the island?
He would be...
This is going to be a very neutral brown dude at this stage, at least. Or...
What, 20 generations down the track? So, of course, we're in the 1930s now, and it's feasible for him for transnational or transcontinental travel to occur.
Yeah.
Before the 1930s, transcontinental travel is really hard.
Yeah.
Or before the 20th century, really. Yeah. Well, not really hard, but it's difficult. It's much more difficult. You're not doing it for fun or to go and get a bride. There is no way the Phantom was taking brides exclusively from Europe.
For 20 generations.
Especially from the 16th century onwards, especially since he lives in, apparently, sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
He would be indistinguishable from the natives.
Yeah.
Indistinguishable.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, fine, whatever. Also, the in these early strips, the Phantom is quite contemptuous of the native people.
Yes,
like as you said,
he's dismissive.
Get this
them.
native mumbo jumbo away.
Yeah,
and he talks like a civilized person. He talks like a person raised in.
Well, I think we heard here that he went to Oxford.
Yeah,
well, in one strip.
Eventually, like the reason why he reacts like we would react.
Yeah.
Or in ways that are familiar to us, speaking about things that he's known all his life as though he were encountering them for the first time, or although they were primitive and new to him. Yeah, that's weird as well. This guy's, for all his life and for the lives of his grandparents, they've just been living in this.
Yeah.
You would be part of that cultural fabric.
Yeah.
It's completely ludicrous.
Yes.
That's fine.
Well, there's worse plot holes in the movie regarding this kind of stuff. But we'll get to that. I just want to talk a little bit about the adaptations if we're done with plot points. I think we've covered most of the key plot points. So we had a serial in 1943. And then there was another serial in 1955, which, as far as I can tell, was very
pretty late
shady and was like chopped together pieces of the 43 serial with some new footage. I'm not sure.
That's super late for a serial.
Yeah.
By the 50s, there's television by the 50s.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this thing... the whole thing sounds very shady. It was very hard to understand on the Wikipedia page what was going on with this thing. There was a TV pilot in 1961, a failed pilot, with Lon Chaney in it in some role. There were 3 knockoff, unofficial, unauthorized movies out of Turkey. We've got to do some special about everything that's going on in Turkey and the Philippines with all the knockoffs.
This is a whole separate podcast.
Yes, exactly. And there was the cartoon, which was set in 2040. I think that was a 22nd Phantom, which came out in 1994. Oh, so a couple of years before the
film.
Movie, yeah.
No connection as far as I can see. No. They're not meant to promote one another.
No. And then in 2009, there was a 2-episode miniseries on Sci-Fi, which was supposed to be a backdoor pilot, which never... But that one, I read the description, and it's a kid who is adopted and then realizes he's actually part of the Phantom Legacy.
Okay.
It's very 2009. Harry Potter, and also he does parkour. So immediately you can see, I see where this is going.
Oh, man. Oh, that's so 2000. That's so New Tens, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
It's funny, the Phantom has been dogged by bad luck in the States.
Yeah.
Every time it should have been a success.
Yeah.
But every time it should have been a success, something goes wrong. Like King Features didn't capitalize on the superhero trend. Or King Features signed up the wrong comic book publishing company to publish their comics, and that particular comic book company was only interested in doing children's comics or something like that. Missed the boat. When the Jungle Comics craze happens with Sheena, in the 50s or whatever, when everybody wanted to read Jungle Comics before the crackdown, before Seduction of the Innocent, they never pivoted to market Phantom as a Jungle comic. So, that's why the Phantom's unknown in America. It's just... in contrast, especially in Australia and Sweden, the Phantom benefited from incredible good luck. A confluence of economic, licensing and legal situations that meant that they got a toehold, they were published in sufficient numbers, or there was a need or a desire or an opportunity to create new stories, like there was in Sweden, and then distribute them to other markets. So it's funny. It's like all the luck flew out of America and landed in these peripheral markets. Yeah. And that's why it has a toehold when it's almost unknown everywhere else.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into this movie, which came out in 1996, directed by Simon Wincer, as we mentioned, written by Jeffry Boam, who also wrote Last Crusade in '89 and seemed to have tried to reuse some elements in this, because there's some definite Zeta-Jones stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And by the way, The Shadow came out in '94, so this is all post Batman 89, of course.
Yes.
We've got the molded suit, the mask. There's a scene in this movie where he takes off his cowl and mask, and it's just like the scene in Batman Returns when Bruce takes off the cowl, and the eye makeup is magically not there when he takes it off. It seems to be lifting from that exactly. Also, Batman Forever, the first Schumacher one came out in 95, and that has all the close-ups of the Batgear when they're gearing up in the Batcave, the belt, the nipples, the cowl, all that kind of stuff, the extreme close-ups. That we get that in this movie as well.
Well, Billy Zane's suit is not molded.
Right.
It's like it's
yes.
He's molded.
Yes. Yes. But the point is the close-ups are. It seems to be.
Oh yeah, we get a little snap
which I mean,
zooms
it's
to the
not
belt.
that wasn't made. I mean, that goes back to even Commando had a scene like that where you get all the gear on the beach when he's putting on his armor. Okay, starts with a title card that says "For those who came in late." I don't know why it says that. It doesn't.
It's not annoying. A comics reference, so why does it say that?
Very annoying to me. I guess it's supposed to say this is a
it's meant to be
thing
humorous.
that everybody knows about.
Yeah. Well, I can. All right. Well, we'll continue on. Now we got Patrick McGoohan narrating this.
Yes.
So the prisoner himself. is in this movie.
Yeah.
So nuts. He starts to explain the backstory.
Yes. Now, okay. So the backstory is there's a Sang Brotherhood, not Sing in this case. They've further
occluded the origins of the ethnic origins. Yeah.
It's not Sing. It's not Indians that were in
Java
Africa or something. No.
Well, they were in Java originally.
What was going on there?
Yeah.
Anyway, now we've got a name that nobody really has. It's the Sang Brotherhood, and we get the story about the pirates, and then
the boy sees his father die.
The little boy sees his father. He's saved by the natives on this island. They give him a ring of significance, the line says, and from that, the boy understood that he was destined to avenge his father's death. I did not understand this line of dialogue from the first minute of the movie. Somehow getting the ring means that, I understand, I'm destined to avenge my father's death because I got this ring.
Yeah, this isn't even a problem with the story. So with this film, there's a big problem where things are connected and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
Spoilers, the Phantom's ring is connected with the MacGuffin of the film, which is 3 skulls.
Yeah.
There's no reason why that would be, aside from the fact that they're both skulls.
I don't know.
It is never explained.
Why did they give this? He's the first Phantom. Why did they give this kid this ring?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll get to that.
In the first place.
But we can't even blame this on... So this film may have been butchered in editing.
Okay.
Because the credits say 2 editors, but the press promotional material, like the press handbook that was given out before screenings, had only 1 editor.
Okay.
So it looks like it was chopped after some test screenings.
Okay.
And in fact, this sequence, Kamal, was added.
Oh, how interesting.
This was not in the original film.
In the comic, it makes more sense that he swears an oath on the skull of the man that killed his father.
Also, he's not adopted by tribespeople.
Right.
That just comes later on after he's lived in the place for a while.
Yeah.
He certainly isn't done a mystic ceremony to and then handed a ring that's of consequence, but we never find out how or why.
Yeah.
Why did they adopt him? Why did they give him the ring?
Yeah.
None of that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It was supposed to clear things up.
Yeah. So, cut to 1938. Now we get this Indiana Jones sequence where these bad guys, led by this guy named Quill, played by James Remar, who we last saw in Judge Dredd.
Yes, he had an uncredited role, that's right.
Yep.
He was a slum warlord.
Yes, he was a block warlord.
Block warlord, that's it. Well,
one of the block warlords. So he's got a tattoo of a web on his arm, which is the same as the tattoo of the pirate flag.
Yeah,
blink and you'll miss it kind of connection.
It's the symbol on the pirate flag.
On the pirate flag, the web, the Sang Brotherhood symbol. And he's also got a scar on his cheek that's shaped like a skull.
Yep. Well, they ask him, the kid, they have a native guide, it's a little kid. And he says, we shouldn't go any further because this part of the jungle is protected.
Yeah.
And by the Phantom.
Yeah.
And Quill says, we don't need to worry about him. And touches this scar, not a mark in indelible ink or a black mark the way it is in the comic. It's like a skull-shaped scar. It turns out he thinks he killed the Phantom.
Yes.
But of course he didn't.
Yes. Well, he did.
He did.
He killed the previous Phantom.
Yes,
but,
he did.
Well, it comes up later on. It's revealed that he believes he has killed the Phantom, so we don't have to worry about it.
That's what everybody believes. Yeah, but anyway.
Okay, well, let's open this tab right now. Patrick McGoohan was the previous Phantom.
Yep.
He was about 73 years old at the time this is filmed.
Yep.
We are told that he was killed 6 years earlier.
Yep.
So he would have been about 67.
Yep.
Old man running around as a Phantom. Quill, James Remar, had stabbed him in the back.
Yep.
Killed him. And then later in the movie sees this new Phantom and freaks out. How can you still be alive? Now, superhero logic aside, how can people that can't tell Clark Kent and Superman are the same person? How can you not tell that the 67-year-old man is not Billy Zane?
Yeah.
How can you think that they're the same person?
Yeah, it's a problem. In fact, we know he was that old because we get his birth and death dates.
Yes, right.
And, he was born in, 1873.
Yeah.
And he died in, 1932 or something.
Yeah.
So he's not 67, but he's in his 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or close enough. Look, maybe he was just in really, really good shape. I mean, he's a Phantom.
Yeah.
Peak human condition, maybe even into his early 60s.
Okay.
And then presumably Quill didn't bother to look at his face.
Right.
He just stole his belt and left.
Right. Right. Okay, so they go into this cave. They have a map. I don't know where this map... The map is to one of 3 magical skulls. I don't know where they got this map.
Where'd they get the map? We don't know.
We don't know. Anyway, they go in...
Why is the skull just in a cave? If it's an important MacGuffin of doom, why is it just sitting in some random cave?
There's much worse later on in the movie. Don't worry about the one in the cave. The one in the cave is protected by a skeleton which comes to life...
For no reason.
And kills one guy and then doesn't kill anybody else. And then the
never
bad
explained what to do with
the
the
bad guys
skeletons.
grab the skull and don't care about the skeleton that came to life. I would be like... Wait a second, guys. This is an important scientific discovery. This skeleton
that
came
comes to life.
And attacked us. They don't know why they're here for the skull yet. That's not revealed until later. They've just been sent on assignment to get this thing.
By Drax.
Right, by Drax, the Destroyer from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Damn, I knew I recognized that name from somewhere.
Meanwhile, the Phantom is sitting on his throne in his skull cave. And this is when we get all the close-ups of all his awesome gear with all the skulls on it. And he's got his 2 guns, and he knows there's trouble. I think his dog alerts him or something.
Yeah. I think it's the dog. And he goes, I'm needed. Or
Yes.
we're needed.
Right. So he knows there's trouble. He gets up. We get a Indiana Jones style chase through the jungle.
Yep. Landing on car, he lands on the hood of the car.
Yes.
It's very Indiana Jones because it's graceless.
Yes.
Batman or even the Shadow would have landed gracefully, in a cat-like acrobatic manner, and he would have been absolutely dominating these guys. Interestingly, Billy Zane just kind of belly flops on the hood of the car.
I really think, and it's all shot in broad daylight. Everything in this movie there's no night stuff. There's a little bit, but I think they're really trying to do anti-Batman, as I said before. I think they're trying to go against. They're like, all those superhero movies did that. Let's consciously have him sit around and eat food in the commissioner's office kind of stuff, or be clumsy about this, or do this during the day instead of at night.
It's hard because, as I said, this film was re-edited at least once.
Right.
And also, Jeff Boam did rewrites.
Okay.
Because originally, the original director that was attached, you know who it was because you saw his name.
Yeah, Joe Dante.
Joe Dante.
He's still listed as executive producer. When I saw him listed as executive producer, I thought, I bet he had the rights at one stage and sold them, and that's why his name is still in there, even though he had nothing to do with it.
That's exactly right.
But, okay, well, sorry, go ahead. Say what you were going to say about the rewrites.
Sorry, I just have to find out where it is in my notes. Okay, here we are. So, Joe Dante said, I developed the script with the late Jeff Boam, who wrote Inner Space. I developed it as a kind of spoof. A spoof of Batman, maybe. We were a few weeks away from shooting in Australia when the plug was pulled over the budget and the presence of a winged demon at the climax. That's like Gremlins 2. A year or so later, it was put... A year or so later, it was put back into production, Sans Demon, only nobody seemed to notice it was written to be funny, so it was disastrously played straight. Many unintentionally funny moments were cut after a raucous test screening. So maybe it was still funny until they panicked after this screening, maybe. And I foolishly refused money to take my name off the picture. So I am credited as one of a zillion producers.
Right.
That was Joe Dante, yeah. He was interviewed in 2008 by Den of Geek.
I was shocked by two of the producers. The two main producers listed on this movie are Robert Evans, producer of Chinatown, The Godfather, and Rosemary's Baby, and was the head of Paramount.
We've mentioned him before, in Popeye.
And also Alan Ladd Jr., who was the head of Fox and greenlighted Star Wars. So these are guys that
should have known better. I'm not sure what their involvement is.
No.
Because, like Joe Dante points out, there were a lot of producers. Yeah. And I think, as a rule of thumb, the more producers, the worse the product.
Right. Okay, so after this big Indiana Jones chase, the bad guy, or at least James Remar, Quill, escapes with the skull. Two of the other bad guys end up getting
arrested by the colonial police. They're there. They're wearing pith helmets.
Yeah. Yeah.
In their khakis.
By the way, we didn't mention the strip started in 36 and this is set in 38. Mm-hmm. I think they've moved it up 2 years to be closer to World War II because there's some vague talk about dictators in the world.
Yeah. Well, in 36, 38's even a little late because the world's at war.
Exactly. I was
36 would have been fine. I don't know why they said it in 38. Doesn't seem to be a good reason.
Yeah. Okay, so now back at the cave, we see Billy Zane as Kit Walker. By the way, Billy Zane was in an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Right, was he? Yeah.
And was in the Demon Knight, the Tales from the Crypt movie, which is not based on any Tales from the Crypt comics.
We can still do it, right?
He's in The Boys as well.
Yes, he is. He's done a lot of TV work, actually, over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Although, we heard he's also done 200 films.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Incidentally, Billy Zane looks fantastic.
My God, he was in incredible shape. And the impressive thing about this, to me, is, at this stage, Michael Keaton was not in this shape, Alec Baldwin in The Shadow was not in this shape, even Val Kilmer, I don't remember him being in this good shape in Batman Forever.
No, actors didn't get in this kind of shape in the 90s.
Yeah.
He, in terms of the 90s, he's in unbelievable shape.
Yeah.
By modern movie standards, like this year, he just looks like he's in average shape.
Yeah.
Well, he looks like he's in good shape.
But
he's not on the gear. Apparently, he's not. he's not dehydrated himself for 2 days before. But my God, he looks good.
Yeah.
Apparently he was very aware of it, according to an interview I read with Simon Wincer. Said he was constantly doing push-ups before shots, and it really pissed Patrick McGoohan off because he'd be waiting to do a take. Billy Zane would be doing push-ups.
Patrick McGoohan's not the one with his shirt off in this scene. It's Billy Zane. Well, Patrick McGoohan should be patient. Let this guy do his push-ups.
Remember, we talked about Hugh Jackman, the Hugh Jackman shape in X-Men 1 and Hugh Jackman shape in Deadpool versus Wolverine, how they're just diametric opposites.
Yeah.
Billy Zane in this is in better shape than Hugh Jackman was in X-Men 1. Like he's not just fit. He's jacked.
It's really defined. Looks great. He's got his shirt off for this whole scene where he's researching what was the skull I lost? He's trying to figure out. He finds it in this old book about.
It's so hilarious. So this is the Chamber of Chronicles. This is the thing from the comic.
Right.
As part of his skull cave, there's a room where all of the Phantom's records are kept over all the generations. So he's in there. He's doing research. Interestingly, he's never heard of the skulls.
Yes, that was strange. It seems really significant. They belong to the Tagunda tribe, which is his tribe, the tribe that adopted him. They were scattered.
Yeah.
Somehow, we don't know how they were scattered.
No. And hilariously, one was in his neighborhood.
Yes.
Why didn't he know that?
Well, this gets worse later in the movie, but also it's said at this point he's like, if it's more powerful than any force, 1,000 times more powerful than any force known to man. Later on, our villain tells us that it has the power to destroy armies. These are the same things we heard about the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders, word for word.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so he's reading this book, he finds out about these things, he's a bit worried, but then the ghost of his dad appears. Now, here's a question, is it the ghost of his dad or is he imagining it?
It's not clear, is it?
Because also, when the ghost of the dad is very disappointed in him for losing the skull, so I guess it really is a ghost, because he's like, hey, those skulls are important, and you let one go. What's the matter with you? You gotta go find it.
So his dad's hit the skulls, but he hadn't?
That's right. And he failed to teach him that important point, I guess. But anyway, the ghost disappears, and then his assistant, this little kid, Garan, he's not the witch doctor in this version. He's just kid in a turban, which
like
doesn't seem to fit with the other tribes that are around.
It's very Falk, though.
Yes, it is very Falk. It's very much so. You're like, where's this guy from? He's like, who are you talking to? And he's like, oh, nobody. So I'm like, okay, so is it? I guess it's a secret. Now we learn later that Garan knows that the Phantoms aren't immortal. He knows how this system works.
Yeah.
Why keep the ghost a secret from him, or is it a mental health problem that he's
mentally ill? Yeah. He has schizophrenia.
Right.
That's what I'm going with.
Okay. Very confusing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, cut to New York. Now we meet our heroine, Diana Palmer, played by Kristy Swanson.
Yeah. Buffy herself.
Buffy herself. She has been up in the Yukon and she's just returned. It's very Diana Palmer.
Yes.
She's been globetrotting.
Yep.
She comes back to her
Lady
uncle's
Adventurer.
place. Yep. Uncle Dave. They're having a big party.
Yep.
I think this was
at their mansion, at the Palmer Mansion. Incidentally, the Palmer Mansion is the Playboy Mansion.
I heard that. Yeah.
Only the exteriors, though.
Right. Okay. Here we meet Jimmy Wells.
You can tell it's not the interiors because there aren't any naked ladies.
Yes, that's right. Jimmy Wells is here at the party. He seems to be he's interested in her.
It's a fun touch to have Jimmy Wells as a character in this movie, I think.
I wish he looked like Billy Zane, though, so we could have such a room. But
Billy Zane should have played him.
Yes.
Yeah, right. He should have just showed up for a few scenes and then he's in the room with the Phantom and you're like, what is going on?
Yes.
That would have been very funny.
But there's some this is the first sign of some weird dialogue where he's like, what's the sandwich? And she says bologna, and then the scene cuts.
Yeah.
Where she's eating a sandwich. It's supposed to be a line that's supposed to be a joke about what he says is bologna, I guess.
Yeah, but
so many lines of this movie are like this. Was that supposed to be a joke?
I remember. Yes, you're right. And there's a really egregious one later on in a cab.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
I think it's probably because I think there was a hatchet job done on it.
Yeah. But also at the party, this guy shows up, Treat Williams, playing this character named Xander Drax, who's a corrupt guy, and Uncle Dave knows this guy's totally corrupt and doesn't want him at his house at his party. He's like, get out.
He throws him out in front of his guests, who is the mayor and the chief of police.
Yeah.
Or the police commissioner. In the very next scene, Drax is in a room with the mayor and the chief of police.
Yes. The chief comes into the cab with him, gets into the cab. Yeah.
Which is just, I liked it. That was a nice touch. I do not like Tree Johnson's performance here. I don't understand. Drax has got to be the least sinister villain ever.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really torn about Treat Williams' performance here.
Treat Williams, sorry.
He's we've had 3 totally over the top villains in a row. We've had Hulk, we had last week's Flash Gordon, we've had this one. They're all scenery chewers.
Here it's the wrong type of scenery chewing. He's really high pitched and giggly, yet he's a big man.
Yeah.
He's this big, imposing guy. He's got like the mustache that's fashionable at the time. He's gone to the trouble of growing a pencil mustache.
Yes. It's a bit like Timothy Dalton's in Rocketeer,
yes,
I would say.
It is very much like that, because they've both based it on Clark Gable or Cary Grant or somebody.
Yes.
They've gone for this.
Errol Flynn.
Yeah, or Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
Of course Errol Flynn with the Timothy Dalton one. So, Treat Williams said of the role, there's a kitchen sink quality to this. There's a kitchen sink quality to this guy!
Very good.
I've got Howard Hughes and Clark Gable and Cary Grant and everyone else who wore a mustache and had some style. It's a great 30s leading man gone mad. So that's what he was going for. I don't think it works.
I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think I'm okay with it. It's not my favorite of the 3. I think last week's Ming
was really great.
Yeah.
But I got to go with Nick Nolte here.
Yeah, okay.
I love that performance. Anyway, he only does one genuinely sinister thing, which is I never saw this movie when it came out. You saw it at the pictures. I think I just saw it in passing on television when it was on in a room, and I sat and watched this scene, and I didn't watch any more of that movie, because in that scene he spring loads a microscope with razor blades and tricks someone into looking in it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, because that's leapfrogging ahead one scene.
Right.
Before that, after the party, Uncle Dave brings Diana and the chief and the mayor up into his office upstairs.
Yep.
And he says, look, this is a bad guy, and I got some information from the people at the library that say that Drax has been looking up esoteric arts, and it's been something connected with the symbol, and he's got the web symbol. And I'm like, how do you know how do you know this much detail about the web symbol, but not specifically what he was looking up?
And this web symbol is complete, like, the Seng Brotherhood, it's the symbol of the Seng Brotherhood, and the Seng Brotherhood are not the villains of this movie.
Yeah.
They're not important.
That's right.
They don't matter.
Yeah.
They only just appear in the third act.
Yeah.
As the guys that are looking after the skull.
Yeah.
So, again, like, what's going on?
Yeah, well, what's going on is that Drax is the villain of the piece.
Yeah.
We're told that by Uncle Dave, he says dictators and tyrants are turning up all over the world, and Drax is one of them. And if he gets
wants
this
to be
power,
the next one, yeah.
If he gets whatever his power, and the other guys are like, "What is this power? I don't think this is real." And he's like, "Look, we have to be careful about this. We can't just dismiss it." And he's like, "I'm gonna go to." He says the symbol is connected with this region.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to that region and investigate. And then they're like, well, you can't do that. You're needed here or whatever.
Well, she says, you need to stay here and look after the newspaper because he runs the newspaper. Yeah. Diana says, I'll go.
Yeah.
Anyway, the very next scene, it's the three of them, Drax, the Commissioner of Police, and the Mayor in a room. Which was a great transition, actually. And then the Mayor or whoever says, well, they know a lot.
Yes.
Or they know too much.
Yes.
Or something like that. Then... the next scene is where Drax calls in the librarian that gave away what he was researching.
Yeah. Okay, so he's got this microscope with two blades in each of the eyepieces that pop out when you change the focus. Okay, how did he build this thing? It works, by the way. When you look in and turn the focus, the word liar comes into focus underneath.
Yep.
So it's still a functioning microscope.
Yeah.
That also has blades pop out at a certain point in time?
Yeah.
Question mark. Also, this guy's a librarian, not a microbiologist. Why wouldn't you have a book that you open up and Springload pops out and kills him, like an ancient book that he would be interested in, instead of a microscope? And he says, hey, come over here and look at this. How many times are you going to use this? Once the guy's dead, on the floor of his office was two of his eyes popped out. How do you deal with the corpse? Do you ever use this microscope again?
These are all great questions that never occurred to me at the time just because I was completely preoccupied with a guy getting razor blades in his eyes. Also, I don't think he killed him. I think he probably just blinded him.
Yes, that would make sense too. Is he not going to report this? Is he...
Well, he owns the cops, Drax.
Okay.
Look, it's just horrible. It's meant to be a villain establishing movement.
Of course that's what's supposed to be.
And you know that. But it's actually the only really villainous thing he does. I mean, a little later he throws a spear at a dissenting, but that's more humorous. Like, that's not sinister.
Yes.
When Drax throws dramatically grabs a spear off a rack and then throws it at a guy. This is an American captain of industry. He's throwing spears at people. An American captain of industry could commission a fucked up microscope to blind someone he hates.
Okay.
I'm buying that much. All of the points you raised are completely valid, and in fact make me feel a little better about that scene now, because now I know that it's much less likely to be real now that all these doubts have been raised. So I'm feeling a lot more warm and fuzzy about it. But that's something he could do that, because he that's the kind of world he moves in. He's got wealth and commercial power.
Yeah.
He could do something like this. Throwing spears at people is just wacky. It feels like something left over from the original humorous draft.
Spear. The Phantom runs around with two guns and he shoots the swords out of people's hands or shoots the guns out of their hands. It seemed to me like the Phantom should be the one using the spear and Drax should be the one using the guns.
Yeah, that's fair. Although the Phantom only he always has those two guns.
Those two guns, yes. It's part of his shtick.
In fact, they're specific guns that are identified in the comic. I forget what they are because I'm a gun person.
Right. One's a revolver and one's something
and one's
else.
An automatic pistol.
Right.
Yeah.
So, then we go.
But no, the Phantom doesn't actually do... He's not like a primitive...
No, right? That's right. Of course.
He's not like Khazar or...
Yeah. No, yeah. You're right. He's not Tarzan. He's
not Tarzan. No, he's like a modern guy.
That's right.
Who just happens to have sworn a mystic oath or an oath and work as a vigilante in Africa.
Yeah. Okay, so while Diana is on her way to Bengala, her plane is attacked by these sky pirates, these lady sky pirates.
Yeah.
Led by Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yay! She's playing Sala, the character.
She's playing Sala,
from the comic.
from the comic. She's playing the exact same sky pirate character.
Very early role for her, so...
Yeah, this is before Mask of Zorro, which is the one that really catapulted her.
Yep.
But she had been in a stage production of Annie when she was 12.
Wow.
She played Annie. And then later on, of course, she played Morticia Adams in Wednesday.
Yep, and she'll also turn up in Red Part 2, if we ever get to that.
Okay, right.
Incidentally, Simon Wincer knew her from an episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Oh, okay.
Because he directed a lot of those. Primarily a TV director for most of his career, working for the ABC.
So he's actually kind of a good choice for this based on that.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the Indiana Jones antecedents, and he did Free Willy. I think he'd done Free Willy at this point, but I think, or maybe Free Willy came later. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But he'd just done a film for Disney called Operation Dumbo Drop.
Yes. Okay, I know that.
He was coming off that.
Yeah.
When he signed up for this, and it was at last minute. Like, they needed someone. He wasn't selected specifically because he was an Australian, and there was Australian money in this.
Right.
The rights were originally purchased, I think, in '87 from the syndicate by an Australian businessman, and I think Village Roadshow here in Australia, and then Paramount came on as the main partner.
Okay.
But, like, Joe Dante was the original director. Right. He's obviously not Australian.
Yeah, right.
But Wincer is a Phantom fan.
Yeah.
I mean, most Australians know, of a certain generation, know about the Phantom. The Phantom used to be put in show bags from the Melbourne show.
Yeah, you need to explain what a show bag is.
A show bag is a bag of goodies, essentially. Some of them are themed, some of them are generic. The cheaper ones are generic.
If you go to a fun fair, you buy a bag of random stuff.
Yep.
You pay a flat price. You don't know what. Oh, you do know what in the bag.
Sometimes you know what's in it. They will have up on display what is in the bag.
Yeah.
And then you're given the bag with those things in it loose.
Yes.
And because I'm one of four, we would always get the cheap show bags.
Right.
And they always had Phantom comics in them.
Right.
So I think Phantom comics were the only comics I ever owned.
Right. Interesting.
Until I was well into my my adulthood.
Yeah, right.
I certainly, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I read Asterix and other comics, but I never owned any Asterix comics.
But you keyed into something else. The fact that those were being given away.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
At some level. Given away.
Yeah.
Whether you wanted them or not.
Yeah.
If you wanted those particular candies and you bought that bag and it came with a Phantom comic, that comic's going to live in your toy box and you're going to read it 100 times and you're going to imprint itself.
It's because Frew would do, print 100,000 issues.
Yeah.
And, 75,000 would sell. What are you going to do with the rest?
Yeah,
some of them go in a box and some of them you discount. Yeah.
Sell them in show bags, yeah.
The thing, when I mentioned, one of the reasons why Phantom did well here is because of tariffs and Australia's protectionist economy.
Right.
From the kind of like the early sort of pre-war period right through until like the 1970s. So it was really hard for like America to dump stock the way they would do in some markets.
Yeah.
So there's room for something like the Phantom to grow and be sold and be produced locally. It's not competing with 100,000 copies of Spider-Man or Superman that didn't sell that particular month.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Catherine Zeta-Jones shows up. She kidnaps...
She's so hot.
Yeah. We got a real Betty and Veronica situation here. And the whole movie, I was Veronica, come on.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Buffy.
She is lovely.
You're gorgeous, but yeah.
And she's feisty and all that. She's exactly what she's supposed to be, but holy moly. Catherine Zeta-Jones was something else in this. Phantom shows up at Captain Horton's cabin and is just like sitting around, like having some munchies.
He's doing like a Batman style thing. He's snuck in through the window, and he's appeared. He doesn't really do this at any other point.
No, but he's not being spooky. He's just like hanging out.
That's
eating.
Right. So is this a holdover from the original humorous script? I suppose.
Maybe, but also it's a bit. It really is a bit like Ray Moore's art in the comics, where Phantom will just show up at Horton's and just be standing around talking to him for 4 panels very casually.
Yes, it is.
It really does feel like that.
So yeah, Jeff Boam he based this on the first two stories, on the Skyband and on the Singh Brotherhood. So he's read the comics.
Yeah.
So, he may have just said, oh, look, the Phantom, Remar doesn't draw motion.
Right.
They're very, a lot of the time, it's very static.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to do things like that, where we're not sure how the Phantom got into something. It'll be funny.
Yeah.
Didn't survive the edits, though.
Yeah, so Horton reveals that Diana has been kidnapped. The Phantom recognizes her name.
Yeah.
And knows
Big coincidence here.
It's revealed that it's not a coincidence later on. It is a coincidence. But we learn later why he knows
and
her.
had a relationship with her when they went to Harvard together.
Right, okay.
Some American university. So here he's educated at an Ivy League uni. Not at Oxford.
Okay, so he goes to the ship where she's being held captive. And he boards the ship. He accidentally goes into the girl's bathroom first.
Yeah.
And then to escape embarrassment, seemingly, he jumps into a laundry chute.
Yeah.
And just conveniently ends up in the exact room, I guess it's the laundry room, where Diana's being held captive.
Yeah, in the very first in the very first comic, he does something very similar. He jumps in the funnel.
That's right.
On Diana Palmer's ship.
Yeah.
Her steamship, I assume.
Did it land him exactly where he needed to go?
Yeah. So it's
okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a direct reference.
Right. Okay. Catherine immediately grabs him and kisses him. The funniest scene. I laughed the first time I saw this movie at the cinema in 1996. I laughed when I saw it this week. Mm-hmm. It's so bizarrely random. It's part of the problem is some of this stuff is very pulpy. It works in a 1936 pulp.
Yeah.
Shot in a realistic post-Batman 89 way, it's strange. It just seems like a mistake or something's missing, but it's functioning as designed, if you know what I mean. They're trying to do a modern take on the Phantom, but they've left all this old-fashioned stuff in there, like her sudden lusting after him and kissing him on the spot.
Yeah, it's very like something that would happen in a pulp, and would very much have happened in these early strips.
Yeah.
So, if you'll forgive me a digression,
okay.
I read an article in Cinefantastic magazine, which I've referred to numerous times in this podcast. It's great because it's all on archive.org.
Okay, yeah.
All of them are.
Yeah.
So you can just read them. He deliberately set it in the 30s so he could embrace this tone.
Right. Of course, right.
He says, it's a lot like the original Phantom comics. It has a lot of the same characters, the same flavour, all the period stuff, the vehicles, the pontoon planes, the submarines.
Yeah.
The Phantom is such an interesting character. He holds to old-fashioned values. He's sort of a gentleman in the old-fashioned sense of the word, chivalrous with women. It had to be in period because I don't think a lot of these ideas translate well into the present.
Right.
Except it's got hacked up since he wrote his original script. He's had to come back and do rewrites to change the tone. It's been edited twice. Unfortunately,
Imagine
I think
if this had the scenes where transitions were swipes, like in Indiana Jones or Star Wars. Something that placed you in the serials of the 30s.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That would be a better... And another thing, of course, wouldn't happen in a million years. Imagine if this movie was in black and white.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't that have been something?
So they
costume would have looked less ridiculous, that's for sure.
Yes. They managed to escape on a seaplane, and the bad guys give chase in a boat. This now comes one of the craziest scenes in cinema history. Yeah. Devil, the dog, the wolf, runs out into the jungle, finds Hero the horse, barks at Hero. Hero nods, like a horse, nodding, and then runs after the plane. So the dog has communicated to the horse, said, hey,
we need to go.
Our master, the Phantom, has just jumped on a seaplane. You need to get out there and give him whatever help he needs.
Nothing like this happens again.
No.
It's just so crazy.
Well, there's a scene where maybe
they just stand in front of one another. The dog barks. The hawk tosses its fetlocks, and it looks like it's nodding, as you said. And then they just run off together.
Yeah.
The horse runs off, and then the wolf chases off after the horse, apparently probably trying to eat the horse.
Yeah, the horse.
Billy Zane had a lot to say about the wolf.
Yes.
About how terrifying it was.
Yeah. And the horse is running at the speed of a plane, by the way. We do get the sense there's another scene later on.
The horse chases the plane.
Yes.
Specifically so that because the plane starts to run out of fuel because its fuel tank has been ruptured by machine gun fire from Quill and his... Or the Skyband or whoever.
Yeah.
It is Quill. Yeah, Quill comes along. And, so they need to get off the plane. How did the dog know that the plane was running out of fuel and that he needed the horse to chase the plane,
I think
catch up to the plane?
I think just give any assistance needed was what he communicated to the horse.
What assistance is a horse going to provide to a plane?
Yeah.
Well, there's only one kind of assistance, and we're about to see it.
Yes.
The horse is not only fast as fast as a plane; it's faster because it's caught up to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this scene is incredible. Incidentally, I'm pouring shit on the setup, but this stunt is fantastic.
Everything in this movie is fantastic, but shit.
It's fantastic in isolation. It's only when
this Jim Henson suit
part of a
that they built for Billy Zane is amazing.
It is really good.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
Everything in this movie is great. It is also terrible. And this scene makes no sense. It's utterly ridiculous, but it's such a great stunt when they have to climb off out of the cockpit, onto the pontoons.
They climb out of a plane that's flying.
Yeah.
And drop off the plane onto horseback. Some stunt people did this.
Yes.
It's not CGI, and it's not done against a green screen. So it's not even... They haven't done a backdrop or anything like that like you would in the 90s.
It's just this absolutely mad stunt, as far as I can tell.
You can tell sort of when it's the stunt doubles, I mean, because...
Yeah, absolutely. They get camera gets really far away, but it is wild.
Yeah. It's an incredible stunt.
Yeah.
And then the plane just crashes into a mountain.
Yes.
And it's like, why didn't you land the plane? You were running out of fuel.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah. You were
the plane wasn't out of control.
Yes, that's right. It wasn't. Yeah.
You just needed to jump on your horse. I guess it really impressed Diana Palmer.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, if it's about winning a bride, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. So the bad guys that were in pursuit are mostly captured by the tribespeople who pull like Ewok stunts on them.
Yes.
They're up in the trees.
They're called the Rope Tribe, I think.
There is the Tuganda tribe as well that owns the skulls. There might be separate tribes. Anyway, Phantom takes Diana back to his skull cave. Then the captain shows up and she says, I'm looking for this symbol.
Yeah.
I'm investigating this. And Phantom sees, he's like, uh-oh, that's the same tribe. And he's like, you got to go back to New York, get out of here.
Yeah.
So she leaves.
And goes back to New York.
Then back in New York, all the bad guys reconvene. There's a hilarious moment here where Catherine Zeta-Jones says, I think he's in love with her. She thinks the Phantom's in love with Diana. And Treat Williams is like, why do you think that? And she's like, well, because he didn't choose me. He had a chance with me, but he went off with her instead. So obviously, he's got to be in love with her. There's no other reason.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
And accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we have the Dick Tracy kind of meeting around the table with all the big bosses.
PowerPoint presentation given by Treat Williams, by Drax. Where he explains about the skulls.
The skulls and how they're going to give him ultimate power.
Yeah, and he says once you have two skulls together, they point out the location of the third. A bit like the medallion in Raiders, which you need to shine the light through to point on the map to show you where the arc is.
Exactly. So, and that makes sense because it's a beam of light that comes through at a certain time of year, shines the thing onto a map.
Yeah.
Here,
it is crazy.
It's so nuts.
It is crazy because the skulls, when we get the two skulls together, this is a few scenes later, they shoot this laser at a map on the wall of the Museum of Natural History or whatever it is. What if there was no map on the wall?
Yep, that was the first thing I thought of.
Also, it shoots a huge hole, which I would say is about 500 meter radius. How do you know what the location is?
Well, the map it's not a very big map, and it seems to be a map of the globe.
Yeah.
Or, well, maybe not the globe, but of a pretty big region.
Yeah.
So it burns a tiny hole.
Yeah.
But the scale of the map, it's like you said.
That's right.
It's probably dozens of square kilometers. How are you going to find it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's so stupid.
So Kit Walker, in his Kit Walker identity, arrives in New York.
Wearing the glasses like he always does. Unfortunately, he takes them off right away.
Yes. Now, he's got a cabbie here, and he...
I think in the film he is Kit Walker.
Yeah, he is Kit Walker.
So it's not an alias.
No, he's gone to university under this name. Anyway. But I mean, he's in his secret identity.
I think it's his real identity, and the Phantom is his secret.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's showed up in his...
I think it's his real...
Yeah.
It's who he really is. So, unlike the comic, where he's really the Phantom.
Yeah. So, okay, he tries this... Oh, by the way, the cab driver was played by... I wrote this down. Oh, John Capodice.
Yeah.
Who was the voice of a cab driver in Mutant Mayhem, we discovered. He's a very familiar actor. I've seen him in all sorts of stuff.
He's the guy that steps on the bug in the first Ace Ventura movie.
Yes, right, yes. Okay, Kit tries to pay him with Bengala dollars.
Yeah, why?
And the cab driver's like, what's this? I need coin of the realm. And he gives him he pulls out a bag of jewels and he's like, how about one of these? Or he gives him the whole handful of jewels.
Opals.
At this scene, I'm like, okay, fine. But then we learn in the next scene that he actually went to university with Diana. So he has lived in North America
for like 6 years. Oh no, wait, it's 6 years since she's seen him. So he's lived in North America long enough to get an education.
He knows
about money.
He knows about money. He knows what jewels are worth.
Yeah.
But we're treating him in this scene like he's come out of the jungle.
Like he's a rube, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Bizarre. Totally bizarre. Doesn't make sense. It's funny because we didn't know how he knew her first. And, information is given later in this movie in a way which is kind of clever, but unfortunately it contradicts stuff that we got in earlier scenes. This happens again and again.
Yeah, and it's a bit much to expect that it's a pretty big coincidence that they knew one another. Like, he's on the other side of the world. Oh. It's not like they run into one another in an American city. We're moving in similar circles. He's like a jungle wizard, and she's lives in New York and is the.
Sure, everything is operating on coincidence.
Yeah.
One of the skulls was in a cave on the same island where he was.
Yeah.
Even though the other two are opposite sides of the world.
It was like the next door cave.
He jumped down the laundry chute from the room he was accidentally in and ended up exactly where she was. It just happens again and again that these people happen to be at the same... It's going to happen again right now. So he shows up at this newspaper office because he's going to see Uncle Dave, who he knew from the old days. And when he's up there, happens to meet... what was the name of the old boyfriend again? Jimmy?
Jimmy Wells.
Jimmy Wells happens to come in while they're catching up. And Kit says, hey, I'm looking for these 3 skulls.
Yep.
And Jimmy says, hey, that reminds me of something I saw when I was 12 years old.
Except it was green, not gold. Yeah.
And he's like, where was it? Oh, it was at the museum. What a coincidence that Jimmy should happen to walk in. What if he didn't walk in that day at that exact moment? Phantom would have never found that second skull.
That's true. Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Except he finds it seconds before Drax anyway. But...
Yeah, but that's.
So finally this didn't bother me as much because it's something for Jimmy to do,
right?
Because it's funny because he's useless,
yes,
and yet here he is being useful.
Yeah,
I feel like this is a common kind of trope where the goofy useless character proves to have a skill or a piece of knowledge that's needed at the crunch time to justify their use. The fact. Yeah.
So Kit and Diana go to the museum. They see the skull on display. And Kit grabs it out of there. He smashes the glass and grabs it. But as soon as he does, Treat Williams is there. Now, here's a question. Drax has shown up at the same moment. What a coincidence. Drax shows up at the same moment to get the skull. Drax knew the skull was in the museum. Why didn't he get this one before the one that was on Bengala Island?
Oh my god, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Why didn't he bother? Why did he wait until he had that one first?
He could have bought it.
Yeah. Or he could have, in fact, when he's at the meeting with all the crime bosses, and then that's the one where he spears a guy, one of the commissioner or somebody says, look, we'll wait until the museum's closed. I know the owner. He'll let us just take the thing.
And he's like, we don't have time for that. I don't want to wait. What do you mean you don't want to wait?
You've been waiting. You knew it was there, and you waited all this time. And he had a map to the other one? What's with this guy? Where's he getting this from?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
This is when the 2 skulls come together and it reveals on the map where the third one is. So they take Kit and Diana hostage. I'm not sure why. I don't remember why they didn't...
They take Kit hostage as well?
Yeah,
they don't know who he is at this point.
Yeah.
Except that he's interested in the skull.
Right.
So he wants to find out why. That's why.
Right.
And he's asking him, why are you interested in the skull? And he says, I'm a collector.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then...
but they take them both back to his...
Drax's
HQ. Yeah, his high-rise. And they're going to question these two people. And they say to take Kit up to the roof and question him there.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're going to dangle him off the roof or something. But when they are going up there, Kit attacks the people that are holding him.
Yep.
And now we get one of the craziest moments in the movie. He ducks into a machine room that operates the elevators. The bad guys go in there, and then they're attacked by the Phantom.
Yeah.
Okay, there's nobody else in the machine room.
Yeah.
Kit Walker went in the machine room.
Yep. And the Phantom
did not come out.
Yeah.
They go to the machine room. There was never anybody else in this room. It's like a closet. Imagine going to a broom closet, and you go in there. Clark Kent goes to a broom closet. You follow a man, and Superman is in there.
Yeah.
And then he does this weird Tom of Finland crotch attack on you, on two guys at once. And and then you don't question. They never say what happened to that other guy.
No. Well, I guess
They're just suddenly attacked by this guy that was in...
I guess it's obvious to them. They know that he suddenly put on a gimp outfit.
Right.
And they don't consider it worthy of comment because they're too busy fighting for their lives against him. Because then they're knocked out and left in the machine room, aren't they? So they never get a chance to tell Drax what's going on.
So.
But you're right, of course. I thought this too when I was watching it. It's like, you can't... This isn't like Superman going into a phone booth.
No. They follow him in there.
Yes.
It's crazy. By the way, I forgot to mention during the museum scene, when the two skulls start floating together and glowing, Treat Williams starts saying, "It's beautiful." Exactly like when the Ark is activated in Raiders.
Yes, it is like
Nazis saying, "It's beautiful."
Yes, and it's also... Like it's very dramatic too. Like stained glass windows are all shattering.
Yes, that's right.
Things like that, like would happen, like a climactic moment. Except we're halfway through the movie.
Yeah. Yes.
This isn't the climax.
More than halfway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking at a map, Drax is able to figure out where this third skull is.
Well, he's got a map that doesn't have a hole in it.
That's right.
So he's looking at the spot where the hole was.
And he says there must be an island there, an uncharted island. He figures that much out. There could be 20 islands there. What are you talking about?
Whatever.
How strange. Yeah. Anyway, they decide they're going to fly over there. They take...
Well, he knows it's the Devil's Vortex. It's a place called the Devil's Vortex.
Bermuda Triangle, basically.
Yes, yeah.
Because at one point, the gangster part... There's one guy that's like mafia in the group, and he's like, "Oh, that's that place where all those ships disappear." They take Diana hostage, they say, as Phantom insurance in case the Phantom attacks him.
Yep.
The Phantom gets in the cab that he had been holding all day, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a friend of Kit Walker's. I need you to follow that car."
Again, the cab driver doesn't immediately think, "Oh, you might be Kit Walker.
Yeah.
You sound exactly like him and have the same jaw."
Yeah.
Maybe the cab driver does though, because at the end he says, "Say hi to Kit Walker for me. Give my regards to Kit Walker," or something.
I think maybe everybody in the movie is kind of like knows and
they just know,
playing along with him.
Playing along with the crazy guy who talks to himself.
He does it in the cab as well in this scene. He talks to his father again. He flees. The Phantom flees. Or he ends up at the zoo. He's being chased by cops. There's a cool scene with the tiger in a cage here where he comes up behind it. He has this affinity with animals, I guess, this jungle power.
Yep. He slaps it on the rump, and it turns around. Billy Zane told a hilarious story about this.
Yeah.
He says in that very scene, the tiger actually growled at him very loudly, and they cut that out for the film.
Yeah.
And he said he was shitting himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can't tell because he's acting, he's strutting. He even did the strut on stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this cab driver also has a police band radio in his car, and he knows that Drax is heading for the dock.
Because they've got a police escort. Yeah.
Right, they've got a police escort, right.
Yeah. So Drax is... Yeah.
So Drax starts flying. The Phantom actually jumps onto one of the pontoons and actually hangs on.
So Raiders of the Lost Ark, the submarine, where Indy hangs onto a submarine when it crosses, the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Like a 3-day trip.
Yeah.
He just clings onto a submarine. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
The Phantom's hanging onto a pontoon.
But this really did come out of the comic when he hangs onto the submarine going into the vortex.
Yes, that's true.
So they arrive at this island, and they go in, and it's this pirate cave, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, in every previous scene, Sala and Diana have been at each other, but here, when there's kind of a threat from one of these pirates, because they're taken prisoner immediately, Sala's like, we girls got to stick together. So she's kind of switching sides.
And then that's it. It switches on a dime.
Yeah.
Heel face turn.
Yes.
Sala is now a goodie.
Yes. Okay, now we meet Kabai Seng.
Played by Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa.
Yeah.
Well, famous, like very recognizable Japanese character actor.
Yeah.
I believe as soon as he appeared, you said, yes!
It was a pretty rowdy audience.
Yeah.
The night we saw it, they were very excited about this movie, very happy about it.
Yeah. There were some fans.
My excitement was when I saw Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. I had forgotten he was in this.
Yeah. I had no idea he was in it.
He's really jacked in it, too. Yeah. He's, like, really fit. By the way, he was in Encounter at Farpoint. He was one of the, like, he's like a judge at, like, at the Q trial. He's listed as, like, Mandarin judge or something like that in the credits.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Fascinating.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
But here he's just doing the same thing he always does. He's incredibly intense.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat movie.
Now, has it been established that the Sang Brotherhood are also looking for the three skulls earlier in the movie?
No.
He's got one.
No, in fact, this is what irritated me about the Sang Brotherhood connection.
Okay.
They literally just have the skull.
Okay. But they know about it. He knows that they actually need a fourth skull to control the...
He's the only one that knows that. Yep. Nobody else knows.
That's right. So, at this moment...
I suppose they're connected then, but... So, who's connected with the skulls? It's a really good question. The Phantom should be, because he's got the ring that controls them, and the tribe that gave him the ring is the one that owned the skulls originally. You know, the Sang Brotherhood should be, because they've got one of the skulls, and they know how it works. Except neither of those two, neither the Phantom nor the tribe, nor the Sang Brotherhood, they're just sort of sitting on them.
Okay, and yet in this moment, Drax shows up with two of the skulls. He's prisoner. Drax and his entire party, Diana, Sala, that gangster guy, Quill, they're all prisoners. Why doesn't Sang, in this moment, kill them and take the two skulls?
Because he doesn't care about them.
Oh, I see.
He basically doesn't care about them because he says you need the fourth skull.
Right.
So the Sang Brotherhood are not the guardians of the scrolls because they have no interest in collecting them. The Phantom isn't the guardians of the scrolls because he didn't even knew they existed until he looked them up in his chronicles.
Right.
So the MacGuffin is peripherally connected to the main character.
Right. And
almost completely disconnected from the antagonists hinted at in the very first scene of the film.
Yeah.
With our introduction to the Sang Brotherhood with Patrick McGoohan's narration, and then the fact that Quill has the tattoo. What is going on? Were there more scenes with the Brotherhood that got cut?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Did it always make this little sense? I mean...
By the way, it's also revealed here that Kabai Sang killed a Phantom, which would have had to be the one before Patrick McGoohan.
He didn't actually say that. What happens is Quill, I think Kabai Sang mentions the Phantom, and Quill says, "I killed the Phantom," and then my favourite line in the movie happens.
Yeah.
Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa says, "Join the club. We've all killed him over the years. He keeps coming back."
Yeah.
In his amazing sibilant drone that he has.
Yeah. But do you think we means somebody else?
The Sang Brotherhood. I don't know if Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa has personally killed a Phantom. Okay. But he's just saying everybody's killed a Phantom.
Okay.
The Phantom is immortal. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. So by the way, during this whole scene, the Phantom's just hanging around up in the rafters. He doesn't come down to help her. He waits for a very long time before he comes down. They shoot a cannon at the gangster, the mafia guy, that just kills him and nobody else. The cannonball just...
There are a few action scenes like this in the film which are very stilted.
Yes.
Not with people standing around.
Yes.
So the mafia guy decides he's had enough. He's had enough of mystic voodoos, mystic mumbo jumbo. He's had enough of pirates. He just pulls out his iron and he says, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You're going to give me the skull and I'm leaving. And what do you say to that, pirate boy? And then the pirate, Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, says something in an unidentified language.
Okay.
He just says some gibberish. And then he says, what does that mean? And meanwhile, like, the pirates are very slowly loading the cannon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right next to him.
Yeah.
And then he says, it means fire the cannon. And this is just standing there. He's holding a gun. He has them at gunpoint. They're not far away. They're not on the other side of this enormous set. They're about 2 meters away. Yeah. He's just standing there waiting for them to load the cannon. He doesn't take one step to the left. If he took a step to the left or a step to the right, he would have been out of the range of this cannon.
That's true of so many of the scenes in this movie. Yeah. Or even, why isn't anybody able to hit the Phantom?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've been spoiled. I mean, action has got a lot better over the last 30 years, I think, in films, right?
Yeah. Well,
choreography.
Yes.
Did this film even have a choreographer, or were they just flailing around?
Yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't want a Phantom movie that was full of martial arts. I don't want a parkour Phantom.
That's a good point, but I also don't want the Phantom to stand during tense action scenes.
Yes, and people just seem to miss him magically when they're shooting at him.
They've got a little more energy.
Yeah. But I will say there's moments in this scene, like when the Phantom is creeping around up above them in the rafters, there's a scene where he goes up the stairs and he's like trying to lay low, and it really looks like a Ray Moore drawing. Like the way he's posed and flat and stuff. There was moments in here that was surprising.
So a big reveal here is that Quill is a member, except it's not a reveal because we already knew. Yeah. Quill is a member of the Sing Brotherhood.
Yeah.
And he's also working for Drax. How can he be both of those things?
I don't know. It's a big question. Where do his loyalties lie? How did he not know about this?
Yeah.
Oh no, they weren't looking for this.
Was he like in a cell that weren't allowed, and he wasn't allowed to know any of the other members of the Brotherhood?
Yeah, it's a big question.
So he could have plausible deniability, or
yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow that he could be a member of both groups.
Yes.
Since they're at odds here.
I agree. And also how did he meet Drax? Like, how did he end up in New York? All that stuff.
Yeah.
If he's if he's one of these pirates, shouldn't he be living here?
Yeah, and that's presumably why he was fighting the Phantom.
Yeah, exactly.
6 years earlier.
There was a story that he told McGoohan that he was going to reveal where the Sang base was.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think there's a scene where he says, I led him down there.
Then he stabs him in the back.
And then he stabs him in the back, yeah.
So, and also, how Quill believes he killed the Phantom, but the Brotherhood that he's a part of knows that the Phantom keeps coming back. Because it's...
Oh, well, they keep him back to life. That's right, yes. He should at least think he would come back to life again, because
making him you know how you solve this? You don't make him a member of the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because him being a member of the Brotherhood pays off in no way, shape, or form.
That's right. It doesn't get them in with the group any. The group doesn't give them any mercy because one of them is a member.
That's it. You make him not a member, and this just is all cleared up.
Yeah.
Because nothing happens.
Yeah. So Phantom fights Coleby. Coleby realizes the Phantom is scared of the shark tank, and then it's like, "Oh, you're actually mortal, aren't you? I know your secret." But then he is flipped into the shark tank and he dies.
And then he gets eaten by sharks.
Yeah.
Like how in Temple of Doom, Molaram is eaten by crocodiles. I thought immediately of that.
Yeah.
Except it's way lamer because it's like a tiny little trench with about 30 centimetres of water in it, and pretend sharks running around on rails.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I laughed when those sharks turned up. I was just like, it just seemed like a weird pirate cliche.
It looks, but and also because the water is so shallow.
Yes, yes.
Unfortunately, this is a very elaborate set.
Yeah.
It's enormous, actually. At the time, it was the largest ever indoor set constructed in Australia.
Right.
At the Warner Brothers studio.
Okay.
That's on the Gold Coast, attached to Movie World. If you've ever been to Movie World, lot cost a lot of money. Something like I've got the statistics. Okay, it was 22,800 square feet.
Okay, wow.
That was for the Seng's Pirate Cave, the largest interior set ever built in Australia at the time. 200 feet in length and more than 50 feet above the stage floor, automated wave makers created the illusion of troubled waters in the set's permanent deep water tank. The art department provided sharks moving on specially built underwater tracks for an added touch of menace.
Right.
Touch of menace is right, because they're not very menacing.
No. It's just hilarious when you see that shark fin pop up. It's like such a weird pirate cliche.
Yes.
It seemed like something out of Goonies.
And it's unfortunate because the water is clearly shallow, because the tracks are clearly just below surface level. Like, there's not enough room for these sharks to be swimming around in. Yeah.
So, the Phantom loads the two ladies into torpedoes with
It's called a torpedo, but it's an actually kind of a submersible that looks just like the one from the comic.
Yes.
He loads them into...
Oh yeah, they're torpedoes on the submersibles. That's what's supposed to explain the missing ships. Is that the pirates have been shooting down the ships. That's why they're disappearing in this Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I thought that was clear. The pirates were responsible.
Yeah.
But the only way to escape the pirates' base is through this submersible, like in the comic, except they got in without a submersible. Why can't they just leave the way they came in?
Yes, there was just an opening in the cave.
It's just a big cave they could walk into. Why can't they just walk out? Maybe there's a lot of pirates back there.
Did they blow it closed or something? I don't know. Anyway, okay, at this point, Treat Williams manages to get the three skulls here. They all float into the sky, they float together. And here's the big power. We've been told that these skulls have the power 1,000 times more than any force known to man.
Yep.
They can destroy armies. They shoot a single laser beam.
Yep.
Just a single little beam.
Yep.
It's like having a laser gun.
Yep.
And
way slower than... You kind of have to force it around. It's inferior in every way to a regular gun. And also maybe kind of inferior to a sharp stick.
Yes. And now it accidentally vaporizes Quill.
Yep.
And now he's like, he says he's harnessed the energy of the sun is the line that Treat Williams actually says. It's just a
strange line, given that the sun's not involved.
But he's like, I don't need the fourth skull. And the Phantom's like, I know what the fourth skull is. It's my ring. Somehow he's magically realized that his ring is the fourth skull.
Now he has a wizard's duel. It's not... The skull does... he says, I know what it is. I've worn it all my life. First of all, you haven't worn it all your life.
Yeah.
Because your dad was wearing it 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And when you were in America, you weren't wearing it, unless there's more than one. And we know there isn't more than one.
Yeah.
Second of all, we were told that the fourth skull controls the other three. But
That's right.
But it doesn't do that.
It does not.
All it does is shoot out a blue beam to counter the triple skull's yellow beam, or whatever colour it is. And then they have a Lord Voldemort, Harry Potter style...
Yeah. It's just the two beams.
Wizard's duel. They go back and forth.
Yeah.
And then, I guess because the Phantom's virtuous, his beam overpowers Drax's evil beam, and then Drax screams in his high-pitched voice and explodes in a fireball.
Yes.
Why is it these ultimate weapons are always so crap? This isn't... I mean, the Ark of the Covenant's impressive. That's a very impressive scene. But I feel like in a lot of these other times when these ultimate weapons show up, I'm thinking specifically, since we were already on the topic of Star Trek: The Next Generation, I'm thinking of when, in the two-parter Gambit, where the object is to assemble a Vulcan superweapon, and the Vulcan superweapon very slowly targets one person at a time, and it doesn't affect you if you're calm.
Right. Yeah.
The ultimate weapon. You could throw a rock at someone faster than the ultimate weapon works. I felt like that when I was watching this.
Yeah, it's very underwhelming.
At least he couldn't he have turned into a blood god? Like,
yeah.
At least it wasn't a sky beam.
Yeah.
But very underwhelming.
Yeah. So Phantom escapes. By the way, the base is exploding. The Phantom has gone out of his way to not kill any people. He shoots guns out of people's hands, shoots swords out of their hands. He's an ace shot, but now he's blown up. This volcano erupts. He's killed anybody that's still in there.
Yeah, a lot of pirates just died.
Yeah. He takes Kristy Swanson back to the cave. He explains about his oath to her.
Yeah, now he explains what the deal with the Phantom is. In the very last scene of the film, he says, I'm number 21. And he shows us all the graves of the previous Phantoms. Couldn't this scene have come a little earlier?
Yeah.
Maybe it was originally supposed to be in the middle.
Maybe.
Hard to say.
Okay, but then he takes her out to the beach.
He hangs the belt, his dad's belt, on grave number 20.
Yeah.
Great, and Dad appears for the final time and says, "Go get her, son."
Yep. And then he takes her to the beach, and she reveals that she knows he's Kit. She calls him Kit.
Everyone knows.
And then, this is a crazy scene, because on the beach, Sala, Catherine Zeta-Jones, is waiting with the seaplane.
Yep.
On the water.
Yep.
And she's waiting for Kristy Swanson to come over to her.
Yep.
Kristy stops Phantom on the beach, says, "Hey, Kit, I know you're Kit." Phantom takes off his mask, as I mentioned, much like Michael Keaton does in Batman Returns, where you don't see the eye makeup anymore, it's just magically gone. But he's done this on the beach in sight of Catherine Zeta-Jones. She can see him with his mask off on the beach.
Well, she's gonna be invited.
Well, I did wonder, either this is going to be an open marriage with the three of them, or it's going to be Kristy and Zeta-Jones that are getting married.
That's good.
I don't know what.
I just think the Phantom's culture, you can have multiple wives.
Kristy says to him, Diana says, "Can you take your mask off?" He says, "I have to keep some secrets." And then he takes it off and says, "I'm only allowed to reveal everything to the woman I intend to marry."
And Catherine Zeta-Jones is right there.
Yeah.
He's keeping his options open.
Right.
Just in case he...
Right. Got it.
He might settle.
Got it.
He might settle for Kristy, but it'd be really great if he could maybe marry Catherine Zeta-Jones.
But she does say, "What if I refuse?" And he says, "Nobody refuses." And it's delivered in a kind of jokey way, which is really good. Like...
If more of the film had been like that.
Like, not like, actually, I'm still thinking it's dead serious the way the comic would. It's just like kind of what... He's almost
the comic
like...
would have been, "Shut up!" and kissed her.
He's more... There's something...
Do as you're told, he
He's
says.
He's almost nervous, like the way he delivers... No one refuses the Phantom, he says.
In fact, Zane is... Billy Zane plays it... Quite a few of the scenes, he's very unassuming, self-deprecating.
Yes.
Kind of... like he's off... Self-deprecating is like... He's often kind of like bemused that he's in these situations.
Yes.
It's the right way to play it.
Yeah.
The trouble is the film's not built that way around
Exactly.
him.
And some people, I think Catherine Zeta-Jones, I think Treat Williams, Billy Zane are in one movie, and Kristy Swanson, James Remar are in a different movie.
Yeah. Patrick McGoohan.
Patrick McGoohan's in a different movie.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, the plane takes off, and then we get a final voiceover from Patrick McGoohan again, saying, "Oh, my son, let the perfect woman..."
He's not a number, he's a free man.
Yes. Yes. And that's the end of the movie, and it says based on the Phantom characters created by Lee Falk. It doesn't say based on the comic strip.
And it doesn't mention the Syndicate.
No, yeah. It's a bit different. I'm not sure what.
I think Lee Falk is just... I don't think he never owned the Phantom.
No, that's right. King always owns...
But I think by this stage in his career, he's kind of like the grand old man. He's still alive at this point.
Yeah,
and in fact, he visited the set.
Right.
Yeah. And met Billy Zane.
Right.
He watched Dead Calm.
Okay.
And said, "Well, yeah, this guy's great, but where's the muscles?" And then, and then he met... 2 years later, he met Billy Zane.
I heard that James Cameron saw this movie and said, "That's the guy for Titanic."
Really?
I heard that. I don't know if it's true or not, but...
I didn't see that myself.
Seems, if true, weird. I have one piece of trivia before we get to your trivia.
Oh my god, okay.
Which is the Mythbusters trivia, which I read on Wikipedia. On Mythbusters Season 5, Episode 17, Superhero Hour, it was tested whether the Phantom Skull Ring would make an imprint on someone when you punch them while wearing it, as it did in the comic, it says here, but I think it's the movie. Because it was indelible ink in the comic. Unless he said that changed later on, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think... I certainly don't remember it being explained.
Right, okay. The result was the myth was busted, and that hitting a person in the face hard enough to leave a ring imprint on the skin required more than enough force to crush a human skull.
Well, it's some kind of old jungle secret.
Right.
Is how he can do that. It's like the lobster's claw.
Right.
The lobster's claw was like a live element, or something, electrical element, wasn't it? He was burning it onto their faces.
Yeah. All right, let's get our trivia.
Okay. All right, I'll move quickly through this because we're already at 2 hours. All right, so this film didn't do well.
Okay.
Budget around 50 million, probably.
Yeah.
Something like 45 to 50 million.
Yeah.
The box office take 23.5 million.
Okay.
So that is a big flop. As I mentioned, in 1987, the rights were acquired from King Features Syndicate, and then Village Roadshow partnered with Paramount to bring it to the big screen. Pretty much probably a post-Batman kind of moment. Joe Dante and Jeff Boam are attached. They're eventually kicked off because of the budget concerns. I don't know about the Winged Demon, but the Jeff Boam specifically said in the interview in Cinefantastic that it was because of the failure of The Shadow.
Right.
So The Shadow didn't do well, and Paramount got cold feet.
Yeah, right.
I think originally they wanted twice the budget, like maybe $100 million or something.
Wow.
And that's, Paramount said, no way, not if you're going to do Shadow type of business.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So Joe Dante's off, and they contact...
Wincer?
Yeah, Simon Wincer, who at that point is doing Operation Dumbo Drop.
Okay.
He reads the script on a plane to London, likes it.
I guess he has a reputation for working with animals, because he done Free Willy and Dumbo Drop.
Maybe
that's part of it.
And the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah, it's kind of adding up.
Wincer has had a long career. He was, I think, he was quite far into his career at this point. He'd been working in television since sort of like the early 1970s, working originally for the ABC, and just had gone to London, worked in like the West End doing theatre, come back to Australia, directed years and years of like cop shows or whatever it is the ABC was making at the time. Then goes to America and starts making American television like the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and other things. He directed a famous miniseries about the American West. Mm-hmm. And then he gets the call. As I said, he liked the screenplay. He agreed to do it. Then after he agreed, quote, there was an urgent call from the executive office. It was John Goldwyn saying, I've just seen the budget, and he was yelling and screaming, you can't make this film for that much money. We don't have that much money, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Because Paramount wanted to make the film in Mexico and Hawaii and Los Angeles. And these are all pretty expensive places to film. I'd just done Operation Dumbo Drop in Thailand. So I paid to have a location manager to go there and shoot some footage. But they didn't want to know about Thailand. They thought it was too third world and ridiculous to make a movie there. The 90s. But I just had a really great experience there. Anyway, on this phone call to John, and I remember it very clearly because Jennifer Lopez, who read for Catherine Zeta-Jones' part, very early in her career, was standing in the corner while I was talking to you on the phone. I said, give me 24 hours and I'll find a way to get it down to the number you want. So that night he went through the script and came up with the scenario that they eventually used. 2 weeks filming in Los Angeles, 8 weeks in Thailand, 6 weeks in Queensland. In Queensland they did most of the interiors.
Okay.
So like things like Drax's office, the Museum of Natural History, the various mansions. In LA, they did the zoo scene at the Los Angeles Zoo, standing in for the New York Zoo, the exterior of the Playboy Mansion, obviously, and some scenes on the docks.
Okay.
And also the outdoor New York scenes on the big Universal lot that has a permanent kind of like New York set. In Thailand, obviously, they did all the outdoor stuff, all that stuff on the beaches, which is obviously beautiful, kind of like Thailand islands in Phuket, or it's near Krabi, actually. And the Phantom's Cave was also shot in Thailand.
Okay.
In a big abandoned warehouse, apparently, on the river. They built the Phantom's Cave. Then Australia, where they did, as I mentioned, the interiors, including the Pirate Cave. As I said, Lee Falk showed up. And once he saw Billy Zane with muscles, he thought, this is perfect. He's the Phantom. He's the Phantom!
He looks the part, and the costume is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he fills out that costume.
Yeah.
He said it was very exciting. In a promotional... I found an old promotional website on Wayback Machine, which is always great. He said, it was very exciting to see my people come to life. They brought together a marvellous group of actors. It was wonderful to see Billy Zane play the Phantom. While on set, Falk regaled cast and crew alike with anecdotes about his famous creation. Of particular interest was the story of how Falk, just out of college, came up with one of the most successful adventure characters of the 20th century. He said, I loved the stories of Greek and Roman gods and heroic men of justice. The Phantom came out of all of that, except that he was different. He had no special powers, but he was physical and strong. He was a deadeye with his guns, but in 60 years he's never shot anybody. That's not true. He shot Smiley, for example. He uses his wiles and his fists to good effect. Now, speaking of Greek and Roman gods, I want to move away from trivia for the moment, and I want to ask a question. So, Kevin Patrick's book is called America's First Superhero.
Okay.
Is the Phantom a superhero? Come on.
I would say yes. He's similar to Batman.
Mm-hmm. And Batman's definitely a superhero.
Yes.
Definitely.
And he's just got he doesn't have any powers, but he's got the domino mask. He's got an affinity with animals, a preternatural affinity for, like, the wolf, at least.
Yes. That's true. And he has
he's got the tights. Yeah, absolutely.
And he has an origin.
Yes, he has an origin.
I suppose the reason I ask this is because some of those things, not all, are also pulp tropes.
Absolutely.
So is the Phantom a pulp character that's inexplicably survived into the 21st century, or is he genuinely an early superhero that's also inexplicably survived to the 21st century?
He's a pulp superhero. I think the Shadow also is a pulp superhero because there were a lot of Shadow comics into the 80s. I would say but I mean, I'm splitting hairs. Like, I would say the Lone Ranger is not a superhero. He doesn't feel like a superhero to me somehow. There's all the accoutrements are missing.
It's true. Maybe it's one of those things where you know it if you see it.
Yes, for example, the Lone Ranger is a hero, but there's nothing particularly super about him. He's not like the best shot in the West or anything like that. He just happens to be a cowboy that happens to wear a mask.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this Lone Ranger a superhero at all.
No.
Yeah. No. So the Phantom has been described as a transitional figure between pulp and superhero.
Okay.
In that he embodies elements of both, and he also happens to straddle virtually, because Superman comes out, 2 years later?
That's right, 38. I think, yeah.
So he's chronologically straddling that divide, and also kind of visually, and kind of like within the content of his comic as well. His costume, I think, is a big part of it. A lot of those pulp heroes weren't really costumed. The Shadow just sort of wore a kerchief, didn't he?
That's right.
Lone Ranger wears a domino mask, but otherwise he's dressed like a cowboy.
Yes.
But the Phantom is wearing a distinctive costume.
I think Zorro is close because he's got the cape. But there's another important thing here, which is that the Phantom, unlike Zorro, the Shadow, the Spider, originates in comics, in the comic strip. Whereas those other guys were in short fiction, prose fiction, or radio. I think Lone Ranger was radio first.
That is a really excellent point that I hadn't seen mentioned in discussions about this. You're right. Those guys came out of or
radio. I think the Shadow was a radio.
Yes, he was.
Host, initially.
Who knows?
Yes.
The secrets in the minds of men, or whatever it is. The Shadow knows. There are some other things. He may have been the first comic character to have no pupils.
Right.
So that's of course superhero masks. They don't have pupils now.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he have pupils? Falk said he was inspired by Greek statuary.
Oh, interesting. But those statues, when they were built, would have been painted with pupils.
Of course they were.
Yeah.
But Falk didn't know that.
Right, of course.
He thought, and in fact, they might not even have known that at the time. They might not have had the technology to identify those paint flakes. He just thought the Greeks had just done it like that, and it was a representation of kind of some sort of austere, pure beauty. And he mentioned Greek myths earlier. He wanted his character to embody some of that.
Okay, then why didn't Harold Gray draw any pupils in Little Orphan Annie characters?
Oh, she's not she's not a superhero. Why didn't he do that? It's so weird. Why do they have this soulless gaze?
Yes.
I think you could make a case. He does have he has an origin story. I mean, that's important.
He's got the cave.
He's not just a bored rich guy.
Yeah.
He has an origin, the Oath, the generations of phantoms.
Yeah.
He looks the part.
Yeah.
He kind of lives in a pulp world.
Yes.
Doing pulp things.
You know what? He's got the you were right. He's got the muscles, whereas Zorro, Lone Ranger, Spider, Shadow don't have the muscles. The visible strongman, circus strongman look. People
make a point of saying that the Phantom is human, only human.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's in peak human condition like Batman is.
Yeah.
It's beyond the reach of normal people.
Yeah.
And he's also preternaturally lucky.
Yeah.
I think there's an aura of magic about him that I think inches him over the line into superhero-dom.
Yeah.
And not pulp-dom. So I think Patrick's right. I think that he probably is the first superhero.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
All
Should we do our rating?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, these comics. Better than I expected. I'm going to vote nay, but I'm not dissuading people from reading it. I think you might find something. You might like this kind of stuff. If the description is up your alley, you might enjoy it. And they were better than I expected, but still not enough that I don't think I would come back to them.
I agree. I'm also going to vote nay for these comics. Because remember, we read the very first ones ever written.
Yeah.
I would like to make the point that Falk wrote these comics for 60 years.
Yeah.
Frew Publishing has put out 2,000 issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are interested in the Phantom, there's something there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, this movie. It's a big nay for me.
Yeah.
It's nonsensical. Tones all over the place.
Yeah.
So many plot holes and coincidences.
Yeah.
That are distracting me from enjoying it, despite the fact that there's stuff that it should work, sometimes works.
Quite often, I think it's the point you made where things are both great and shit, and I think that's because of the Matrix. I think if you take out a scene and watch a scene in isolation, it can be really great.
Because it's not contradicting other scenes, or he really looks fine. By the way, I mean, look at The Mummy from 1999. That is this movie done right? That's what this movie... It wanted to be an update of Indiana Jones. It's got a funny tone throughout. It's got your feisty female lead who... In that movie, he never doubts her. You know? It's really interesting. You never see another movie like that, where... Rachel Weisz, he never questions her. She explains something, he's like, okay, let's do it. Does everything right. That's what this movie wanted to be. So, definitely nay.
Yeah, the same. I'm nay as well for the same reasons. The pacing and tone are way off. Story-wise, it doesn't make sense. We've also got crap villains, and no stakes.
Especially when you realize that the 3 crystals just form a laser beam. Yeah,
and Drax never felt like a threat. We're told like you said, we're told he wants to be, I guess, the American Hitler, except I don't see how 3 skulls, it's just never...
Yeah, agreed.
Never feels as like the Ark of the Covenant. We never get a scene like we have in early Raiders where... serious men are top men are discussing what the Ark could mean. Instead, we just have a shirtless Billy Zane just flicking through his chronicles. I wasn't concentrating on what he was saying.
Yeah. yes. I agree. I was like, how many push-ups was he doing between takes? I was thinking that the whole time. Yes. Agreed. 100%. It's interesting. The Raiders example is interesting too because that has the biggest plot hole, which is that even if Indy didn't look for the Ark, it wouldn't matter.
Right.
Because they all get killed by it at the end just by opening it.
That's true, actually.
He never had to be in that movie. But this movie can't overcome that. It's not able to paper over that. It's not exciting enough somehow.
The problem here is, it's still Indiana Jones is still a rip-roaring adventure, even if Indy doesn't matter at the end.
Yeah.
The trouble with the Phantom movie is that the Phantom... Billy Zane very much matters, because he has the ring that controls the skulls, and yet it didn't.
Yeah.
Those rings didn't do anything. His ring didn't do anything.
And as you said, the fights were kind of bland, people standing around. They're not Indiana Jones fights, so yeah.
No, I'm afraid Wincer is not Spielberg.
No. Our adaptation, I'm actually going to go yay.
Amazing.
I think if you were a fan of the comics and you sat in this movie, you'd be pretty satisfied with it. Like the stuff where he's if you wanted to see the Phantom ride a horse through the jungle, you see that in this movie. It looks really good. I think all the characters are there. I think the tone is less serious than the comic is, and that might be disappointing, but... overall, I'm going to say yay to it, I think. Unless you can change my mind.
I had a question mark, because I was going to make up my mind on the spot, which is what I'm going to do now. So I feel both ways.
Yeah.
It has stuff from the comics.
Yeah.
Like, of the first 2 issues, I feel like I'm occupying your role. I saw lots of things that I recognized.
Yes.
I saw the submarine.
Yeah.
The Devil's Vortex. The Sky Band.
Yeah.
Sala.
Yeah.
They're all there.
Yeah. The behavior is there. Sala's behavior, her sudden lusting after the Phantom is there.
That's what she did in the comic.
Yeah.
Jimmy Wells shows up.
Yeah.
You know? The butler for the Palmer estate is called Falkmore.
Yes, he's in it. Yeah.
Remar,
right.
Lee Falk.
Right. Yes.
That's more Easter egg than adaptation, but still. But on the other hand, there's all this junk, you know, the supernatural elements.
That's true.
The magic ring that's pointless, the skulls. There's nothing like those skulls. Later on, Falk, he did start to introduce supernatural elements later on.
Okay.
When he was running out of ideas, like aliens would show up, like the Phantom would fight aliens, the Phantom would fight giant robots, the Phantom would fight witches. But I don't. To me, that's not really what the Phantom is about.
Yeah.
So I could go either way. I think I would probably come down on nay.
Okay.
Just because the tone is so over the place.
That's legit. That's totally legit. Yeah.
I think I guess this is mainly a question of quality, which is not usually what we cover in adaptation, but I feel like if it had stuck to a tone, I would have felt like they had made an effort to tell a new Phantom story, but instead they seem to be trying to do everything at once. It's a real dog's breakfast, which means at no point it sort of feels like I'm coming to grips with a new version of the Phantom or even an old version of the Phantom. So that would be why I would vote no.
Yeah.
If you can't decide if either Kumar or I are correct in terms of adaptation, perhaps I'll quote Lee Falk himself.
Okay.
So many writers are disappointed with the adaptations of their work, but I think it's great. This is the Phantom movie. It's not dark like Batman. It has the lightness of Indiana Jones. They did a marvellous job from Simon Wincer up and down, and in my view, it sounds like, feels like, looks like, and is the Phantom.
Excellent. Okay, please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please contact us through the email address in the show notes, or you can send us a DM on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, or even leave a comment on YouTube. All those links are in the show notes. And please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion so we can buy tickets to go see The Phantom live with Billy Zane.
Yep.
Okay, next week we will be covering Golgo 13 from 1973, starring Ken Takakura.
Awesome.
And it's out there. You can find it if you look hard enough. There is like a DVD or Blu-ray release from the last couple of years even, I think. And that's we'll probably read volume 1 of the comics.
Great.
As far as I know, the storyline is not based on any specific comic, and that's very specific reasons for that we'll talk about next week.